Hello friends. I hope you all are doing well. So here is the continuation of What If Naruto Got All for One from Ninja Scroll. Naruto Uzumaki. It was the wet, warm and increasingly pleasant feeling coming from his crotch area that woke Naruto up from his slumber. He smirked to himself as he quickly recalled what happened yesterday, and he opened his eyes and looked down to see Enko eagerly bobbing her head up and down, her luscious lips wrapped around his thick and long beep while she laid completely beep in between his legs. Her curvy and athletic body displayed sinfully for his viewing pleasure as she shifted to get more comfortable. With a sigh of contentment, Naruto thought about yesterday's events after Anko and he sparred. It only took him 10 seconds into the fight to determine at which level Anko had decided to fight him, around mid-high Chunin. In light of that, Naruto had limited himself to low-mid Chunin, limiting himself to do way better than what was expected of him as a recent graduate, but not high enough that would make her extremely suspicious. It had worked perfectly, if the excited grin she showed during the fight and the fact that he had forced her to use one of her personal jutsu in order to not let him win at the mark of 4 minutes and 48 seconds. True to their wager, Anko had dragged Naruto to a bar that also served her favorite food, dango, which had also decided to partake in. Even though she could eat as much dango as Naruto could eat ramen, he had no trouble paying for their food and drinks. As Naruto, he had no need to spend the money the Hokage sent to him monthly to take care of his basic expenses, since he went around stealing everything he needed and every expense of the apartment he lived in was covered by the Hokage in addition with the stipend. So, Naruto had a decent amount of money to fall back on. Spending almost a month worth of it in dango and sake was no issue, and it apparently only made Anko like him even more than she originally did, which suited him just fine. They spent hours inside the bar eating, drinking, talking and flirting until it was past midnight, and the owner of the bar had politely kicked them out when they looked ready to start beeping each other right there and there, with Anko on his lap dry humping him as they made out with each other. A tipsy, but still right in the head Anko, had basically dragged him to her apartment where he had proceeded to lose this new body's virginity to her, something which astounded her when she found out because according to her, he had beeped her better than she could imagine ever being beeped and had reshaped her beep so now only his fat, big beep could ever hope to give her pleasure. That suited Naruto perfectly. He knew that while Anko was loyal to the village, there was enough bitterness in her directed to them so as to easily change that loyalty towards him instead, along with augmenting its intensity by being someone that caused her pleasure and gave her something she craved: true companionship. The fact that she was a Jonin-level ninja and could be extremely useful as a spy was only a bonus. He genuinely liked her, and the pleasure he could get from her could be compared to what he remembered from Minato and Kushina, as bizarre as that sounded. Naruto groaned in disappointment when Anko released his beep from the warm and delicious embrace of her mouth and tongue, but shared her smirk when she straddled him and, using her hand to angle herself, impaled his beep deep into her beep. With a loud beep, she began to ride him hard, putting her hands on his chest to get enough leverage to rise her entire body up and down. Naruto grabbed her by her wide hips and used his hold as leverage himself to meet her movements with thrusts of his own, increasing the pleasure they were both feeling. The sound of wet flesh smacking against wet flesh resounded through the room as Naruto's balls smacked against Anko's jiggling beep as she rode him with almost reckless abandon. Wanting to feel even more pleasure, Anko clenched her beep around Naruto and they both groaned at the sharp tingling sensation that went through their entire bodies at the action. Anko threw her body back as she released Naruto's chest and reached with her hands to grab her own bouncing tits, beepaging them and pinch her nipples as her beeps turned to shrieks and squeals of pleasure. "Beep me harder, you magnificent stud," she shouted in a lust-filled voice as she began to increase her fast pace to an almost frantic one. She hissed in pleasure when she pinched her nipples hard enough to hurt. Naruto smirked up at her. "If that's what you want," he replied before he tightened his hold around her hips and began to basically use her as a beep sleeve as he increased her pace with the help of his arms and also increased the speed and intensity of his thrust. It only took him less than a minute to trigger Anko's orgasm after doing that, which triggered his own, and with a grunt of pleasure he spilled himself directly into her womb. Anko fell forward, her entire body shuddering as her beep milked Naruto's beep for all it was worth, and she cooed in delight as she felt him painting her walls white and filling her up for what was likely the 6th time in less than 10 hours. Naruto had beeped her into unconsciousness last night after coming inside all her holes and bathing her on his cum, and the first thing she did when she woke up was to take him into her mouth when she felt his MVP pleasure tool poking her beep and twitching as they spooned. Coming down from her high, she rolled over and sighed in disappointment when his soft beep, which she knew only needed a nudge to get back up even after coming so much, slipped outside her warm cavern, and she shuddered when his cream pie began to leak out of her and onto her bed. She could feel that it was still as thick as his first load. She propped her head in one hand, her elbow resting next to his head, and grinned as she started to run her nails across his deliciously sculpted body, which resulted in his beep starting to slowly harden once again. "You are insatiable, woman," he said in amusement as he wrapped his right arm around her and began to almost possessively run his hand up and down her side, eventually settling on her right butt cheek, which he started to almost absently fondle. Anko shuddered in delight at this, and her grin turned saucy. "Well, considering that I am well and truly hooked on that beep of yours now, which looks ready to go again already might I add, I think I have a good reason to want to have beep with you until my cunny hurts," she said as a way of explanation. Naruto raised an amused eyebrow at her. "So, I've got you hooked, huh? That means you want to be my girlfriend or something?" he asked her teasingly as he gave her beep a harsh squeeze, his fingers sinking into the firm and abundant flesh. Anko mewled at the action and shrugged her shoulders, her big tits jiggling with the motion. "If you want to make me your girlfriend, that's fine. If you only consider me your bitch or a dump for your cum or a beep sleeve, that's also fine. As long as you beep me regularly, I am happy," she told him seriously and honestly before she smiled lustily. "But to be truthful, I think it would be best if you brought more girls to your bed so we can beep them and show them the miracle that is your beep in my tongue. You'll find that I can lick a mean beep like no other," she said, her tongue extending until it reached her nipple and she flicked it with the tip of it. Naruto's beep twitched at that and he smirked to her. "Well, if that's the case, then you are going to be all that to me. You are my woman. Your body belongs to me and only I get to touch you like this and beep you. Also, I like your idea to getting more girls for us to beep, and I'll be making them mine too. That means that you will also get to enjoy them. Do you have any suggestions?" Anko's response was a grin. XXXXXXXXXX, Streets of Konoha. After another round which Anko, this time taking her from behind like that bitchin' in heat she was, Naruto was making his way towards a weapon and shinobi equipment store she had suggested while they were getting ready for the day when he asked her about it. They parted ways after a short makeout session, and Anko basically ordering Naruto that he was now going to be living with her. Since his apartment was even smaller than her living room, and the payment was to satisfy her lustful urges, Naruto had easily agreed before she went to the T&I department, which was where she worked at. Now knowing that Anko was an even bigger potential source of information with her position there, it was even more imperative for him to get her loyalty. He owned her body, that was certain, but now it was time to gain her heart. The magnificent beep was a start, along with encouraging her obvious bibepuality, and it would only be a matter of time before she started to consider him the center of her world. Not wanting to waste more time that he already had by reshaping Anko's beep to his beep, which wasn't really a waste of time since he enjoyed doing so just as much, Naruto had sent an army of clones to Training Ground 43 in order to continue training his control over his unlimited chakra, along with drilling into his body the fighting style that he was going to use in order to not get anyone else suspicious about his sudden rise in skill. Naruto eventually reached the store that Anko told him about, and from the outside it looked like a simple affair. There were pieces of equipment and some weapons that were obviously of extremely good quality displayed on the outside, and above the door a simple sign that read, "The Rising Dragon," could be seen. With a shrug of his shoulders, Naruto stepped inside, making the bell jingle as he opened and closed the door. "Good morning and welcome to the Rising Dragon. How may I help you?" asked an enthusiastic voice, and Naruto looked towards the counter to see a girl a year older than him with dark brown hair styled into two Chinese buns and short fringe bangs framing her pretty face. Her eyes were dark gray, and Naruto was amused and pleased to see that she was blushing prettily as she looked at him. Naruto smiled softly at her, which increased her blush, and approached her. "Good morning yourself. I'm here to buy some equipment since I just recently graduated. Name's Naruto Uzumaki, by the way," he said as he stopped in front of her. "Naruto Uzumaki? You are the academy student that managed to infiltrate the Hokage Tower, knock out the Sandaime, steal the Forbidden Scroll, and kill the seasoned Chunin that tricked you into doing it?" she asked in astonishment, and he nodded sheepishly. "Damn. The whole village is talking about that. Good work though. Anyways, I'm Tenten Higurashi." "Nice to meet you," she responded with a wide smile as she extended her hand. sighing softly when he smiled at her again and took it and shook it firmly, something that showed that he didn't think less of her for being a woman, which pleased her to no end. This guy is even more handsome than Neji. And already easily more pleasant to be around too. Naruto released her hand and chuckled, feeling her emotions of being impressed, intrigued and slowly rising attraction towards him. It wasn't that big of a deal. Even though I'm not at the top of my CL beep. I've never lost a spar. It's in the records, you can check if you don't believe me. Mizuki underestimated because I couldn't do the Bunshin no Jutsu, but that's because I have too much chakra and not enough control. It was easy to surprise him when I used a solid clone technique I learned from the Forbidden Scroll to attack him. Tenten's eyes widened and she leaned forward, feeling quite pleased when his eyes momentarily dipped to get a look at her pushed-up cleavage, which showed thanks to the tight tank top she was wearing, before he looked back up into her eyes. Solid clones? Yeah, Naruto nodded before he made the hand sign and a clone puffed into existence at his side. Her eyes looked on in fascination as the clone walked towards one of the displayed swords and went through a few graceful but very basic kata before putting back where it was. They take a lot of chakra to use but almost no control at all, which make them perfect for me. Also, anything they learn I also learn, which can be used both for training and information gathering. I'm still looking into how I can apply them to combat, but I have a few ideas already. It only takes a single good hit to destroy them though, said Naruto, and demonstrated that by dispelling the clone with a solid hit to the temple. Don't hit yourself, Uzumaki-kun, she said in amusement, and they both laughed at the lame, but still funny, joke. That's an impressive technique in any case and I know you'll be able to do wonders with it. She encouraged him and she was rewarded with another beautiful smile from him, which had Tenten blushing and rubbing her thigh together from behind the counter. She bit her lower lip. So, you said you needed equipment? Inwardly smirking as the positive emotions towards him increasing, Naruto nodded in confirmation. I need a new wardrobe since the clothes I owned have met an unfortunate end since I have been training extensively for the past 5 days. I also need kunai, shuriken and fuma shuriken of the best quality you have, and I need a bladed weapon that can complement my taijutsu and increase my reach. Tenten nodded in understanding. You can pick any clothes you want from the racks over there. She pointed towards a part of the store that had many types of clothes hanging for both male and females. If you tell me the amount of kunai, shuriken and fuma shuriken you want I can get them for you. And for the other thing I've got the perfect thing for you I think, she said with a wink. Naruto grinned. Nice, in that case then I need. After Naruto told her the amount of throwing weapons he wanted she went back to procure them for Hai along with the bladed weapon she felt was what he was looking for. For his part, Naruto went towards the clothes section and proceeded to pick a simple but stylish outfit to complement his looks. After a few minutes he picked up a few cargo pants, a few long-sleeved shirts, a few vests with hood attached and few Enbu-style sandals. He also got a piece of dull crimson-red cloth in which he was going to put the metal pate of his headband in order to use it as a belt. Naruto went back to the counter to see that Tenten was back and she had a few boxes stacked one atop of the other on the counter and next to them were a set of black, metallic forearm guards that also had protection for the back of his hand. He noticed that attached to the straps that were used to secure them around his forearm was a rectangular compartment. What's this? He asked in interest as he put the clothes he picked one of them up after putting the clothes he chose on top of the boxes. Put it on, Tenten told him instead, and when he did that she proceeded to explain. These forearm guards have a hidden blade mechanism. Flick your wrist upwards, she said, and Naruto did just that. With an almost silent hiss, a foot-long thin, but sturdy-looking, blade extended from the compartment. They can be used to both fight complementing your taijutsu as you said and for quiet and subtle beepinations. I designed and made them myself, she said proudly. Naruto gave her an impressed look and proceeded to play with it for a few moments. They're perfect and exactly what I needed. Thank you, Tenten, he said and smiled, making her blush and duck her head, but she had a pleased smile on her face. Naruto flicked his wrist downwards and the blade hissed back into the compartment. Naruto took it off and put it next to its twin on the counter. How much do I owe you? She told him the price and Naruto made his own calculations and nodded in acceptance in understanding. It was a bit more than what he had expected, but it was understandable considering the quality of what she sold. Besides, it wasn't like he was going to run out of money by paying up about a year worth of monthly stipends given to him by the Hokage. He no longer had to worry about rent and food since he was now going to live with Anko, and the missions he was going to be doing were sure to increase the amount of money he had at his disposal. Naruto paid her, and as she put the money away she looked on interested as Naruto pulled out a scroll, unfurled it and put everything he bought on top of it. A small spike of chakra later and a puff of smoke, everything was sealed into the scroll. They locked eyes and nodded, an understanding beeping between them as they understood the convenience of sealing scrolls. They were already kindred spirits. "I hope you were pleased with your purchase, sir," she told him formally with a bow, but there was mischievous glint in her eyes. Naruto nodded and smiled. "I was. Though I preferred the service, to be honest," he said teasingly, and chuckled when she blushed. "Seriously though, I think I'll make all my purchases here. You don't even need to use anything here to see that the quality is above most shops and the prices are reasonable." Tenten recovered and she let a sly smirk appear on her face. "Don't be like that, Naruto-kun. Just admit that you just want to see me again in the future," she said flirtatiously with a wink as she crossed her arms under her perky, round bust and pushed it upwards. Her best beepets might be her legs and beep, but she knew that her C-cups beeps were nothing to scoff, and if the look Naruto gave them was anything to go by, she wasn't the only one that thought like that. "Of course," admitted Naruto easily as he looked into her eyes. "Only a fool wouldn't want to look upon such a pretty girl like you." Tenten blushed but preened under his words. "Hey. My entire team is made up by fools, then. Neji is only interested in Fate, and Gai-sensei and Lee are only into hugging each other and training in taijutsu," he thought with some irritation before she flashed a smile towards him. "Well said." Naruto chuckled and shrugged his shoulders. "Just stating facts, Ten-chan. Anyways, thanks for everything. I'd like to chat some more, but I need to do a few more errands and continue training." Tenten nodded, blushing a bit at the affectionate nickname he just gave her. "Sure, no problem. And hey, for the record, I'm Ekunoichi, you know, genin, but I graduated a year ago. Perhaps we can get together and spar one day. I know how to use many weapons, and that way you can get used to the hidden blades faster," she proposed, a hopeful tone in her voice. She wanted to get to know him. He was interesting, respected women as equals, and was the most handsome man she had ever seen. If he wasn't the best catch, she didn't know who was. Discerning her intentions through her current emotions, Naruto's smile widened, and he nodded. "Of course. I'll be honored. Are you free tomorrow? Team placement is on Monday." Today was Friday, meaning that he had today and 2 more days to prepare and get used to his fighting style. "Yes," she said quickly and eagerly, glad that he seemed to want to get closer to her as much as she wanted to do the same with him. "Then it's a date, Ten-chan," he said with a wink and a smile before waving and stepping out of the store. A happy Tenten could only blush and give a squeal of happiness, that while at odds with her usual disposition for those that knew her, didn't look exactly out of place and made her look even cuter. XXXXXXXXXX. Training ground 43 the next day. "So, is this where you have been training?" asked Tenten as she looked around in wonder and some jealousy as she walked further into the terrain. "It's way bigger and nicer than Training Ground 9. How come you get to train in a place like this when you don't even have a team?" She turned towards him, pouting as she put her fist on her wide hips while furrowing her brows at him annoyance. Naruto, who had been enjoying the utterly beepy visage of Tenten wearing a sports bra and tight short shorts, perked up at her question and shrugged his shoulders. "I don't really have permission to use it per se. Since nobody uses it because of how close it is to the Forest of Death, I just come here and train without issues." Tenten looked at him with raised eyebrows. "The Forest of Death? Really? Is that a thing?" Naruto nodded. "Yeah, it's just like any other forest except for the fact that everything is bigger, meaner, and thus, deadlier. Only Chunin-level ninja and above are allowed to go inside and train there." "People do actually go willingly there to train?" she asked with some incredulity. She knew that normal forests were dangerous enough. What Naruto described was a death trap and a sure way for someone to go and commit suicide. Naruto shook his head and his lips twitched upwards. "Not really. I only know one person that goes there to train regularly. She is a Tokubetsu Jonin and part of the T&I department. Her name is Anko Midarashi. She is kind of crazy, really." "Right," she trailed off, wanting to ask just how he knew a Tokubetsu Jonin without coming as nosy. Not finding a way, she decided to change the subject a bit. "So how did you find out about this training ground?" Naruto paused for a moment. He couldn't tell her that he knew of it because he had the memories of his parents, who were technically also him now, since that would just result in him pegging him as insane and take it either as a joke or him not wanting to tell her something, which with women he knew that to be a double-edged weapon. So, he decided to go with a lie that was believable and could be arranged in case Tenten decided to ask. It was Anko, actually, he said with a chuckle and went on to explain at her curious expression. A few days ago, I was eating dango in what turned out to be her favorite stand. I can't remember why exactly, but we got talking and the subject of me needing a deserted training ground came up. After bribing her with steak and dango, which she absolutely loves, she told me about this place. I think she likes me now, he said, smiling at the understatement at the end.
Ah, I see, nodded Tenten in understanding, wondering for a moment if he read her mind considering he just answered exactly what she had been wondering before asking him about how he found about TG-43. She then grinned at him challengingly as she hefted the MB-PIV scroll in which she carried her weapons. Alright, that's enough questions from me for now. Are you ready to get that cute beep of yours kicked?
Naruto raised an eyebrow and smirked at her. Funny. I was going to see that exact same thing. He trailed off before deliberately looking at her up and down. Just that your beep is beepy, instead of just cute. Tenten blushed though she preened at the way he was looking at her. She had worn these clothes on purpose to get a reaction out of him and she was happy to see that he very much liked what he was seeing. Just as much as she liked what she was seeing. The tight, white tank top and black shorts he was wearing left nothing to the imagination after all. Grin and blush still in place, Tenten quickly kneeled, unfurled her MB-PIV scroll and unsealed a ninjutsu before rolling it close once again and putting it aside. Remind me once again who is the more experienced one here? She asked rhetorically as she began to go through a few katas to warm up. Me, actually, thought Naruto to himself with amusement, not like he was going to say that to her, or anyone, ever. Instead, he gave an approving nod towards her katas. They were solid and fluid at the same time and no movement was wasted. She was very skilled, he could tell. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and gave a sheepish smile. That might be, but I'm also competitive. I'm a guy after all, he said as he began to lazily stretch, the forearm guards already strapped around his forearms, ready to be used. Tenten finished her warm-up and smirked. She took his words exactly as they were meant. Naruto saw her as an equal and not inferior because she was a girl.
More points in his favor. While neither Lee or her sensei looked down on her for being a girl, thankfully, she sometimes felt that Neji looked down on her for being a girl and for being a clanless orphan. It was more than nice to see that a boy she liked regarded her as an equal, unlike Neji, whom she used to like for a time until she actually got to know him when they were put in the same team.
First to draw blood wins? She asked with a raised eyebrow as she got into her stance. Naruto nodded. Sure, he said before getting into his own stance and flicking his wrists, the hidden blades coming out with a sharp, metallic sound. Don't worry, Naruto-kun. I'll make sure that by the time we are done you are at the very least decent using the hidden blades, she said mockingly to him.
Naruto just chuckled and shrugged. He was not going to tell her that technically, because of him training in their use with 100 clones yesterday, he had a bit more than a literal month of experience using the hidden blades. And, because of his transformation, that was enough time to make him more than just a bit proficient in their use. Still, he needed to play nice, for the time being, making sure that his progress made sense with the tools he had at his disposal.
The Sandame knew that he knew the Kage Bunshin, which mean that he had some leniency regarding learning jutsu. Not too much, but enough that most things could be explained. He was already known to be even more talented and skilled than Sasuke Uchiha, self-proclaimed and village-promoted elite, which meant that not too many inquiries would be made unless he did something truly outrageous for his age, like doing the Hiraishin as a genin. Instead, he just grinned at her. Bring it on, Ten-chan. Tenten's response was to just smirk before launching herself at him at quite the decent amount of speed. In order to keep up appearances, Naruto kept himself on the defensive, evading, blocking and attempting to counter her attacks. He quickly determined that she was around mid-Chunin level, just beneath the level at which Enko had fought him the day before yesterday. In light of that, Naruto decided to perform at a low Chunin level. It was certainly a level which he had no right being as a newly graduated academy student, but nothing that was outrageous. In fact, This was the level he was before his transformation. Tenten for her part could scarcely believe what was happening right now. She knew that while she wasn't a genius like Neji, or a taijutsu freak like Lee, she was certainly above the average chunin despite still being a genin. Her sensei, Maeda Guy, had told her as much in their last team evaluation, which had been about a week ago, and she was sure she had not gotten any weaker since then. And Naruto, a newly graduated genin, was keeping up with her using weapons that he got just yesterday. Yes, he was visibly struggling. He couldn't seem to counter her attacks effectively or go in the offensive, and it was obvious he was still not used to his weapons, but he was still keeping up with her. Not even Neji had been this strong, skilled just after graduating, and he was regarded as a genius. So, if that was the case, what was Naruto Uzumaki? The exchange continued for a few more minutes until finally, Naruto seemed to falter when he tried to block a vertical downward slash from her, and Tenten used the opportunity expertly to quickly trip him and send him to the ground with a yelp. Wasting no time, she straddled him and pressed the tip of her ninjutsu to his neck, only with enough pressure to make a thin cut and get just a thin line of blood to come out. "That's my win," she declared breathlessly as she smirked down at him victoriously. Naruto smirked and raised an eyebrow at her. "You sure about that?" he asked smugly. Tenten tilted her head curiously before she became aware of a slight, stinging sensation coming from her right arm, and when she looked at it to inspect it, her eyes widened in shock when she saw Naruto's left hidden blade close to her arm and a thin cut on her arm, from which a little blood was trailing down her arm. "I believe that's a draw," he said cheekily when she turned to look back at him. Tenten furrowed her eyebrows before pouting adorably. "I want a rematch." "All right," nodded Naruto, feeling that the short spar with her had been very productive, not as much as his training with the hidden blades yesterday, but enough that he still learned a few more things. He smirked at her. "Why don't we make this a bit more interesting? Care for a wager?" As competitive as she was, there was no way Tenten would say no to that. "Sure. What kind of wager?" she said, leaning back, and when her beep rested right on his crotch, which resulted in her feeling the fact that he was actually bigger than what his shorts led her to imagine, Tenten finally realized the position they were in. Her entire face turned red and she eeped, but, curiously enough, made no move to rise from where she was. Naruto's smirk turned into a grin that had Tenten feeling both nervousness and excitement. XXXXXXXXXX. Anko's apartment, later that night. "So," began Anko after she regained her breath after another intense session of beeping that resulted in her losing count of the amount of consecutive orgasm her lover gave her before filling her womb to the brim with his own cum when he orgasmed. "Thank Kami and Tsunade Senju for the anti-pregnancy jutsu. You didn't beep Tenten-chan? That's a shame." Naruto raised an eyebrow at Anko as the purple-haired woman wrapped herself around him and rested her head on his chest. "No," he trailed off before giving her a suspicious look. "Wait, did you send me there because that's one of the best places to get ninja equipment, or because you wanted me to beep Tenten?" "Little bit of both, actually," she admitted without shame as she looked up at him with an impish and shameless smile. "I think she is cute and beepy as beep. And I know for a fact she swings for both teams. The reason for her obsession with Tsunade-sama is not only because she looks up to her for her abilities as a kunoichi, you know?" she told him with sultry amusement. Naruto's beep twitched at the possibilities. "I see. I'll keep that in mind," he said before sighing in pleasure as Anko grabbed his now semi-hard beep and began to languidly pump it up and down. "And before you ask, while I didn't beep her, I did make out with her multiple times between spars. When I proposed the wager of the loser having to do whatever the winner said, she ordered me to beep her. I made sure to lose every spar after that," he said with a shameless grin. "Pervert," said Anko, grin still in place, as she continued to jack him off to get him ready for the next couple of rounds. "The way you talk, you think you could have won against her? Don't get me wrong, you are easily the most talented and skilled newly graduated genin I've ever seen, but she's still got an entire year on you." Naruto grunted as his beep got harder and harder thanks to Anko's ministrations. "Possibly. She was very adamant on winning after I told her about the wager, though. So I don't know," he trailed off, lying easily. Anko med before grinning as she felt that Naruto's beep was sufficiently hard. With a flexible and fluid motion, she straddled him and impaled herself on him, beeping in delight as he spread her walls and filled her vagina completely, the head of his beep pressing against her cervix. Your beep's the best." I'm ruined for other men, she admitted deliriously as she began to slowly move back and forward, sensually grinding herself on him with his beep deep inside her. Naruto grunted at the high amount of pleasure he was feeling and grinned up at her as he grabbed her by her wide hips. That was kind of the point, Anko-chan, he said before he began to aid in her motions using his hands and moving his own hips in tandem with hers to increase the amount of pleasure they were both feeling. Are you, oh beep yeah, are you planning on, ruining every girl? Right beeping there, that you beep? Damn right I am. And guess what? You are gonna help me do it, Naruto growled as he suddenly began to use his hold on Anko to make her stamp jumping on his beep. The declaration and sudden the change of pace and movement triggered the first of Anko's many orgasms of that session. As she came, her hips began to move on her own as she adopted an aigao expression, her imagination running wild at what was to come in the future. XXXXXXXXXX. Team Beepinement Day. Naruto looked at himself in the full body-length mirror that was in Anko's room as he finished putting on the clothes and equipment he would be using from now on. His upper body was covered by a long-sleeved mesh shirt. On top of that he wore a sleeveless and zip-up vest that had a hood. Above the long sleeves of his mesh shirt, his forearms were wrapped with dull crimson-red bandages. And on top of that his forearms were covered with the guards that had the hidden blades. His lower body was covered in black cargo pants that were held up by the dull crimson-red cloth he bought at the Rising Dragon that had the Konohagakure headband displayed on the front, which functioned as a belt, the excessive cloth falling down by his left side to his knee, one length slightly longer than the other. The lower end of his cargo pants had dull crimson-red cloth wrapped on top of it until where his calves started and his feet were covered in black ninja sandals. He had 2 kunai holsters wrapped around his right thigh with using dull crimson-red tape, a pouch resting on his lower back and 3 small scrolls on his left thigh, also secured with dull crimson-red tape. Anko likes, said the purple-haired woman as she laid on the bed, shamelessly beep, as she licked her lips and looked at Naruto like he was a piece of meat. She pouted beepily and cutely at him as she deliberately displayed her body to him. Do you really have to leave? Today is my free day, you know? She purred. Despite being aroused by the sight, Naruto made use of his inhuman self-control provided by the part of him that was Minato to raise an eyebrow at her. Are you really up to for more after last night and this morning? He asked with some incredulity. He sent her beep, which was puffy and red and still leaking with his cum due to the cream pie he gave her not too long ago, a pointed look. Anko groaned and clicked her tongue, her pout becoming an annoyed one as she lost her beepy pose. Now she just looked cute. Spoil sport. Sure, I'm feeling sorer right now than when after I trained seriously, but it's nothing that medical ninjutsu and some cuddling wouldn't fix. Naruto sighed. You do have a valid point, but it's team Beepinements. It's kind of obligatory that I go. While he could easily send a durable enough clone with his powers, he still had an image to uphold. As much as I want to stay and beep you all day, I have to go. I promise to make it up to you when I get back. Anko just pouted harder. You better, mister, or I won't let you beep anyone but me. Naruto just smirked. As if. I bet you want to bring more girls into this relationship, even more than I do, he said and chuckled when Anko blushed slightly and looked away while grumbling. With a shake of his head, Naruto walked towards her and gave her an ardent beep to say goodbye. Once outside, Naruto shoved his hands into the pockets of his pants and with an air nonchalance, joined the crowds of Konoha's villagers walking around the streets as he made his way towards the grounds of the Konoha Ninja Academy. Naruto was amused to see that while the male populace either glared at him with anger and or hatred or ignored him completely, and the female populace that was young enough for such things, was conflicted between admiring how attractive he was and the fact that they knew he was Kurama's Jinchuriki. He doubted said conflict will be resolved any time soon, so he decided he would just amuse himself with it for the time being. Eventually, Naruto reached his destination and he had to pause for a moment in order to admire the view before him. Located at the base of the Hokage rock, in which was carved the Hokage monument, that had the faces of the Shodame, Naidame, Sandaime and Yondaime Hokage overlooking the village in a symbolic manner, since they were its protectors, the Konohagakure Ninja Academy cut quite the visage. It possessed a large size and had several buildings that one could tell were built progressively over time. There was a tree in front of it that had a swing on it, and the main building, which was colored in shades of orange and red along with the rest of the buildings beneath and around it, ironically enough had a gigantic kanji for fire on it. Naruto smiled at the 3 times worth of memories he had of this place due to the human elements of his transformation. After reminiscing for a few moments, Naruto shook his head and quickly made his way towards the buildings dedicated to the academic division of the academy. Considering that it had not been stated otherwise, Naruto made his way towards the CL beep room he had been using for the past year. The moment he arrived, opened the door and stepped inside, all conversation screeched to a halt as his CL beep mates began to stare. "Is that Naruto? They said he looked different, but I didn't expect it to be this much. I can't believe he defeated and killed Mizuki-sensei. Ah, come on. Sure, the guy is good at shurikenjutsu and taijutsu, but he can't even do a bunshin. There's no way he beat a seasoned chunin. But that's what everyone is saying, even the chunin and jonin. Why would they lie? I don't know, but..." Naruto opted to ignore the stares and whispers and walked further into the CL beep room to take his seat. He quickly found the pair that he, as just Naruto Uzumaki before the transformation, got along the best with while in the academy, and seeing an empty seat next to one of them, Naruto smiled after approaching. "Sup, Choji, Shikamaru? Can I sit here?" "Go ahead, Naruto." "Munch. That's no problem at all, right, Shikamaru?" "Munch," answered Choji as he held a bag of chips from which he periodically pulled out a handful of chips and shoved them into his mouth. Choji Akamichi was the heir to the Akamichi clan, known for their ability to convert calories and fat into chakra and body modification techniques. Choji had a rotund build and markings on his cheeks in the form of swirls. He had spiky, brown hair that reached around his waist, and his red forehead protector was wrapped around his head, proudly displayed on his forehead. He was wearing a red suit with plated armor on his torso, arms, and upper legs, having the kanji for food on the front of the armor that covered his torso. Shikamaru gave a yawn. Yeah, it'll be a drag to say no now," he said before looking up to give Naruto an inquisitive look. "It's troublesome to ask, but why do you look so different, Naruto?" he asked, his serious tone matching his serious expression. Shikamaru Nara was the heir to the Nara clan, known for their shadow techniques and its members being smarter than the norm. Shikamaru had narrow brown eyes and shoulder-length black hair tied in a spiky ponytail. He was wearing a short-sleeved gray jacket with green-edged sleeves and the Nara clan symbol on the back, under which was a green-lined mesh armor t-shirt. He also wearing brown pants, a pair of silver hoop earrings, and his blue forehead protector was wrapped around his left arm. Naruto sheepishly rubbed his head and smiled. "Honestly, I don't really know. One moment I have one of the blades of a Fuma shuriken piercing my flank, and the next I'm like this with my arm shoved through Mizuki's chest," he said. The casualty in which he said it had Shikamaru looking at him with wide eyes, while Choji had turned green in the face and he no longer looked like he wanted to eat more chips. Naruto's following grin was apologetic. "You'll have to ask Iruka-sensei if you want the details." Choji looked even greener. "If that is how it ended, I don't think I want to know the details." Shikamaru regained his lazy, irritated expression before shaking his head. "Troublesome blonde. I hope we don't end in a team together," he said before he went back to taking nap, somehow able to do so after likely spending around 12 continuous hours sleeping the night before. Naruto just chuckled, knowing that Shikamaru didn't mean anything bad with those words. He was amused to see that Choji quickly recovered and was back to eating his chips without issues. Seeing that both Choji and Shikamaru were busy, he decided to look around the room and observe the other graduates. While as just Naruto Uzumaki, he already had an idea of what the others were capable of. A new perspective from his enhanced self regarding his CL beep mates wouldn't hurt him. Having already beepest Shikamaru and Choji, he focused on the others that were in the CL beep room. He completely ignored the run-in-the-mill students, those from civilian backgrounds that didn't do anything to stand out. The first one he focused on was Sasuke Uchiha, one of the only 2 survivors, along with his mother, Makoto Uchiha, of the Uchiha Mbipake, perpetrated by his own older brother, Itachi Uchiha. He had black eyes and spiky black hair that fell over his face with bangs framing his face. He was wearing a navy blue, short-sleeved shirt with a high collar, white shorts, white arm warmers and blue shinobi sandals. His forehead protector was wrapped around his head and displayed on his forehead. Easily the second most skilled student in this CL beep, right beneath himself when he was just Naruto, Sasuke was a self-proclaimed elite shinobi that was as arrogant as he was antisocial. As just Naruto, he never liked him, and he knew that the feeling had been mutual, fueled by Sasuke's inability to beat what he considered a clanless orphan in a spar no matter how hard he tried. Now, how Naruto disliked him even more than before if that was possible. His own dislike as just Naruto for being an arrogant beeple and a prick was enhanced by Kushina's dislike of those traits in a person. Kurama had a deep-seated hatred for anything that was Uchiha, and Minato's indifference to it didn't counter any of those feelings. It was thanks to Minato's inhuman self-control that he wasn't killing Sasuke on a whim. That, and the fact that he was Mikoto's son, with him Kushina apparently had a thing. Before she had to marry Fugaku Uchiha and she had gotten with Minato. Interesting. I really hope we don't end on the same team, thought Naruto to himself after dismissing Sasuke as nothing more than an annoyance. He then turned his attention towards another one of the students who was quietly seating by himself all the way to the back. Shino Aburame was the heir of the Aburame clan, known for having a symbiotic relationship with insects with varying abilities that they used in many different techniques during combat. Shino was tall, the tallest of the graduating CL Beep before Naruto's transformation, and had fair skin. He had dark, bushy, brown hair and his eyes were covered by a pair of dark sunbeepis. He wore a sea-green jacket with a high, upturned collar that covered the lower half of his face, brown pants and blue shinobi sandals. His forehead protector was wrapped around his head. Naruto could see, as they crawled across his face and hands, and feel the 10 of thousands of insects that were living inside of him and feeding off his chakra. He smiled innocently when Shino turned sharply towards him, no doubt his insects informing him of the impossible change in his chakra. No doubt that he would be wary of him from now on, but not as much, since he knew that Shino knew how much chakra he had as just Naruto. The only change that should register to Shino's Kakaichu insects are a significant increase in amount and potency, which while surprising in the amount of time it happened, isn't that alarming considering that it had the same signature. I wouldn't mind being on the same team as him, thought Naruto to himself with a shrug before turning his attention on the last person on the CL Beep room that was worth any mentioning, albeit barely. Kiba Inuzuka was the heir to the Inuzuka clan, known for their animalistic appearances, animalistic fighting style and usage of nin dogs during combat. Kiba had messy brown hair, sharp black eyes with vertical slit-like pupils, pronounced canine teeth and the distinctive red fang markings of the Inuzuka clan on his cheeks. He wore a form-fitting black jacket, with zips over the chest and sleeves, along with black pants and sandals, also zipped, matching the jacket. Akamaru, his white puppy, was resting on top his head and his forehead protector was wrapped around his head. As egotistical as Sasuke and with his "I am the alpha" attitude that made him a prick, Naruto also disliked Kiba but not to the extent he now disliked Sasuke. While as just Naruto he disliked the two of them just as much, with his transformation, Naruto's dislike was enhanced by Kushina's own dislike for those who were like him. Since there wasn't hatred of Kurama to add to the mix, Kiba was significantly more tolerable than Sasuke, as in he didn't have the urge to kill him out of principle. Still, I would prefer if I wasn't on the same team as him, thought Naruto to himself as he returned the aggressive glare and growl Kiba sent his way with an unimpressed expression and a raised eyebrow that only seemed to aggravate him further, which bothered his K9 partner whose hackles raised a bit, forcing Kiba to focus on calming him down when he noticed. I'm telling you, Sakura, that's the best way you can use your forehead protector. Don't tell me you are still conscious about your forehead. You know I'm not, Ino, it's just that it feels a bit weird to use it like this. Sakura-chan, Ino-chan. We're here. Oh, you were right. Thanks, Hinata. Let's go in before it's late. Naruto perked up at the sound of those three voices, which he knew he was the only one that could hear them, and he turned towards the door of the CL Beep room as it opened to let in the only female students of the graduation CL Beep that were worth more than a pea-beeping thought, both regarding their abilities and their looks. The first one was Sakura Haruno and she was the only one of the three that didn't come from a prominent clan but he knew that both her parents were successful ninja of their own. Sakura has fair skin, green eyes, and long pink hair with two bangs framing her pretty face and her forehead protector wore as a hairband. She wore black biker shorts that reached above a few inches above her knees, high-heeled black boots that reached a few inches below her knees, a short pink apron skirt, pink elbow protectors and a sleeveless, loose red kimono top that accentuated the shape of her beeps. There was a black holster strapped to her right thigh and a brown pouch rested on top of the curve of her beep, strapped around her waist. The reason why Sakura stood out, beyond her looks, was because of her intellectual capabilities, which were on par with Shikamaru's, though differing in the aspect that hers was geared more to acquiring and retaining all kinds of information rather than crafting complex strategies. Sakura was also skilled in taijutsu, shurikenjutsu and specially genjutsu, her chakra control being the best out of everyone in the CL Beep, despite having significantly more chakra than the other run-in-the-mill graduates. Naruto looked at her up and down. Her beeps might be just B-cups, but her hips, waist, beep and legs are out of this world. And she isn't useless. I'd like to have her on my team, thought Naruto to himself with a smirk. While as just Naruto, at first, he found Sakura annoying because of her infatuation with Sasuke. But after witnessing Sasuke being unable to defeat Naruto again and becoming friends with Ino and Hinata, Sakura had gotten her act together and became a respectable kunoichi. Naruto turned his attention to the second one that entered. Ino Yamanaka was the heiress to the Yamanaka clan, who were known for their mind-related techniques. Ino had fair skin, light baby blue eyes and long platinum blonde hair that was pulled into a long ponytail that reached past her beep with a bang of hair covering her right eye. She was clothed in a mesh sleeveless bodysuit that only reached mid-thigh. Over that she wore a purple top that only covered her perky beeps and a miniskirt that was a few inches above the end of her mesh armor, and her forehead protector was worn as a belt just above her skirt. The reason why Ino stood out, beyond being a clan heiress and her beauty, was because of her skills in ninjutsu, taijutsu, shurikenjutsu, genjutsu and chakra control. There was also the fact that she was apparently developing sensing abilities as well. She had a lot of potential. Her beeps are a nice C-cup and her body is a perfect combination of feminine suppleness and athleticism. While Sakura beats her in the beep department by a bit, she does not lose when it comes to hips, waist and legs. I certainly wouldn't mind being with her on a team, thought Naruto with the same smirk still in place. Like Sakura, Ino used to be annoying with her crush on Sasuke, but for the same reasons as her pink-haired friend, she got her act together and became a kunoichi deserving of respect. And finally, the last one to enter was Hinata Hyuga, the heiress of the Hyuga clan, known for their Kekkei Genkei, bloodline limit, the Byakugan, and their prowess on taijutsu and chakra control and manipulation. Hinata had fair skin, white eyes with a lavender tint and long and straight dark blue hair that extended beyond her hips and was styled in a Heim cut with 2 shoulder-length strands framing her face. She wore a light lavender, sleeveless kimono-style blouse with vertical lines, tied with a dark purple obi around her waist, a pair of short dark navy shorts with thigh-high stockings and black high-heeled boots. Her forehead protector was loosely tied around her neck. The reasons why Hinata stood out were obvious, beyond her beauty and the fact that she was the heiress to the Hyuga clan. She was more skilled than even Sasuke at taijutsu and her chakra control was on par with Sakura and Ino. She also excelled in ninjutsu, shurikenjutsu and genjutsu, and that was without including her clan's techniques. Naruto looked at her with wide eyes. Holy shit. Her beeps are an E-cup, even bigger than Anko-chan's. And the rest of her body is just as athletic as Ino's, and her hips, waist, beep and legs give Sakura's a run for their money. Please, let her be on my team, he thought to himself, his smirk still in place. At first, just Naruto never noticed Hinata because she used to be extremely shy and soft-spoken. That began to change, however, when she began occasionally spy on him and follow him around. Naruto supposed that by becoming the most skilled in CL Beep with his background he had inspired Hinata to become a better version of herself. And when she became friends with Ino and Sakura, she became even more confident in herself, which showed on the fact that she wore clothes that flattered her voluptuous figure. Naruto blinked as he realized that he was inevitably responsible for the 3 girls becoming competent, high genin level kunoichi by the time they graduated the academy. Cool. Naruto. Is that you? You look, trailed off Sakura with a blush as she looked at him in shock. She always thought that he was cute, what with his whisker marks and azure blue eyes, though the amount orange he insisted on wearing was unflattering. Now, however. Super hot, exclaimed Ino, a blush of her own across her face as she looked at Naruto up and down. She licked her lips sensually and smiled flirtatiously as she beeped her hip aside beepily. My, Naruto. I've heard the rumors of you looking different after what happened a week ago, but I never would have thought you'll turn in such a hunk," she said before turning towards Hinata and nudging her suggestively. "Don't you agree, Hina?" Hinata's entire face was flushed as she stared at Naruto without blinking. Yeah," she exclaimed before steam began to pour out from her ears as she got even more red. Naruto chuckled and rubbed the back of his head. "I don't really know what happened, but," he grinned a bit suggestively at them, "I don't think it's a bad thing if girls are beautiful as you three like how I look." Sakura blushed even more at his words, bashfully looking down as she got called beautiful by whom she saw as the most attractive guy she knew. Ino beamed in delight and winked flirtatiously at Naruto, thanking him for his compliment. Hinata looked like she was about to faint. "It was nice seeing you, Naruto. I'd love if we end up in the same team together," she said before blowing him a saucy beep. She giggled when Naruto goofily made the motion of capturing it and pocketing it for later. After a cutesy wave, she grabbed Sakura and Hinata by their arms and dragged them away all the way to the back so she could talk to them without being heard. Little did they know, Naruto could hear them perfectly even though they were whispering. He focused on their conversation as he basked on the jealous look being sent his way since his interaction with the three most beautiful girls of the graduating CL Beep had not gone unnoticed. Truthfully, Shikamaru, Choji, Sasuke and Shino didn't seem to care about it. The run-in-the-mill males and Kiba, however, were green with envy, Kiba even more so as he looked to be frothing at the mouth, not unlike a dog with the rabies. "Oh, my Kami, Naruto was cute before but now he is even hotter than Sasuke," whispered Ino in an almost breathless manner. Naruto could feel her staring at him. "And the best part, he is neither arrogant nor a prick, unlike Sasuke and Kiba," muttered Sakura. Her voice indicted her disbelief at herself at one point having a crush on the Uchiha. Naruto also could tell that she was glancing at him. "Hina, you better make your move fast or I will take him for myself," declared Ino, her voice absolutely serious. "Likewise," muttered Sakura, her voice as serious as Ino's. There was a pause before Hinata spoke, her voice as soft as it was beeped. "Aonyo. I wouldn't mind, sharing him, if it was with you too, Ino-chan, Sakura-chan." Naruto's eyes widened in a bit of disbelief as he heard Hinata's admission. It was always the quiet ones. "Hinata!" whispered Sakura in disbelief, but Naruto noticed that there wasn't neither disgust nor denial in her voice, only surprise and interest. "Ho!" Naruto then heard Hinata release a soft eep, as he heard Ino wrapping her arms around Hinata's neck from the side and pressing her body against Hinata's. My. You have become quite the kinky and naughty girl, Hina. You might be in need of a spanking. Though the idea is more than tempting. What do you think, Sakura?" She whispered seductively against Hinata's, making the blue-haired girl get red and visibly hold back a beep. "Yes," was the only thing that an beeped Sakura could say. Ino giggled. "Yay! You gals are the best girlfriends as girls could ask for," she declared. Interesting, thought Naruto with a perverted smirk as he imagined the May implications the conversation he just overhead had. Now more than even he wished for any one of those three being on his team. That was when Iruka arrived. Naruto laughed mentally in amusement at the apprehensive look the scarred Chunin sent his way. He tried to placate him by sending on his way an innocent smile and a wave, but that only seemed to freak out the Chunin even more, which resulted in Naruto being even more amused. After a motivational speech in which Iruka told them how proud he was of them and what would be expected of them as ninjas of Konoha, he began to beepine the teams. Naruto ignored everything until his names was mentioned. Team 7 will be formed by Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto perked up at the sound of his name. Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki, said Iruka. Huh. What are the odds? He thought the moment he heard the name of his sensei. He frowned in distaste when he realized that Sasuke was one of his teammates, though the more negative emotions were placated by the fact that the girl he wanted the most on his team was put on his team. At least there is a silver lining to this. He smirked when he heard the interactions from the girls. Hina. Arg. You lucky bitch, whispered Ino playfully, the grin clear in her tone. Hinata, wipe off that smug smile from your face, please, muttered Sakura in mock annoyance, no bite in her words. I'm sorry,
Her voice didn't sound apologetic at all and her happiness was clearly heard in her voice. Kiba suddenly stood up, getting the attention of everyone and aggravating Akamaru on his head, before pointing at Naruto with a pissed-off expression on his face. "Hey, Iruka-sensei, why does he get to be on the same team as Hinata-chan?"
Naruto blinked slowly before raising an eyebrow. "Oh, yeah. He has the hots for Hinata." "Oh well. Beeps to be you, mutt," he thought in amusement, now knowing for a fact that the Inuzuka had even a sliver of a chance of making reality whatever he imagined involving himself and Hinata.
Iruka gave a disapproving look for his disruption. Because, Kiba, the two highest scoring students are put with the lowest scoring one. Despite Naruto easily being the most skilled of all of you in taijutsu, shuriken jutsu and the use of henge and kawarimi, he is incapable of performing the basic bunshin. Not only that, but the score of his theoretical test wasn't that good. Because of that, Naruto had the lowest overall score of all of you while Hinata and Sasuke had the two highest scores.
Naruto chuckled and sheepishly rubbed the back of his head in response of the stares shifting to him as Iruka spoke. Kiba, instead of being placated, looked even more angry. Then why come he graduated if he can't even do a bunshin? Getting sick of being belittled by someone like Kiba, Naruto turned towards the Inuzuka and smiled chillingly. "Why don't you ask Mizuki? He can tell you with as many details as you want." More than one gasped at his words and the fact that he was seemingly unaffected by him killing someone that had been his teachers for 4 years. Kiba growled at him. "Why you?" Iruka's eyes hardened. "Enough," he declared before turning his eyes towards Kiba, who was cowed by the look of his sensei's eye. Naruto demonstrated that he did not need the bunshin to be a ninja when he successfully terminated a Chunin-level traitor. Nor any other jutsu he knows, for that matter, he thought with apprehension. In light of that, the Sandame deemed that Naruto was worthy of graduating. "Are you questioning the Sandame's decision, Kiba?" Iruka asked, getting Kiba to pale and shake his head rapidly in the negative. "I thought so. Now, let's continue. Team 8 will be formed by Shino Aburame, Sakura Haruno and Kiba Inuzuka. Your sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. Team 9 is still in circulation, thus, Team 10 will be formed by Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akamichi. Your sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. And that's it. Your Bepine sensei will come to pick you up within the hour," he said simply before leaving. Groaned Ino loudly, getting the attention of most of the CL Beep as she pitifully rested her upper body on the desk in front of her. "Why'd I have to be on the same team as the lazy bum and the eating machine?" she whined, her voice indicating that she wanted to cry. Choji, at Naruto's side, stopped for a minute before shrugging and continued eating his chips. Shikamaru muttered a muffled, troublesome, since he had not raised his head from his resting position. Sakura gave a less dramatic groan of her own as she crossed her arms. "At least you don't have to deal with the mutt," she said and ignored said mutt's indignant yell before shrugging her shoulders. "Though I don't really have complaints about Shino. He is calm and quiet, Kiba's total opposite now that I think about it, so it kind of evens out in the end," she commented thoughtfully. In the back, Shino pushed up his GL and gave a minuscule nod of acknowledgement. Hinata smiled gently at Ino and patted her back in a consoling fashion. "No need to worry, Ino-chan. You know Shikamaru-san is very smart and Choji-san is strong. They will be good teammates for you," she tried to reassure her friend. "That's easy for you to say," grumbled Ino before raising and looking at Hinata with a mischievous expression. "You are in the same team as Naruto. I bet you are probably thinking of." Hinata, knowing that Ino had been about to say would have been highly inappropriate, quickly covered her mouth with her hand while blushing. "Ino-chan." Ino's grin was visibly even behind Hinata's hand. Naruto chuckled at this. That was when Kiba, after taking his dog off his head and putting it on his desk, stood up from his set and aggressively walked towards Naruto with his chest puffed up. "Oi, dead last." His exclamation got the attention of the entire CL Beep and they watched as he stood right in front of Naruto, looking down on him since he was standing up while the blonde was sitting. "You might be in a team with her, but Hinata's mine, you hear that? So, don't try anything funny." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "If I am the dead last, what does that make you, who has never beaten me in a spar?" asked Naruto rhetorically, making everyone laugh at Kiba as the Inuzuka got red in the face at his words being thrown back at him. Then, Naruto shook his head before pointing with his thumb towards the back. And I don't think Hinata appreciates your words. Kiba looked towards her and he flinched a bit at the disapproving frown on Hinata's face and the scowls on the faces of Ino and Sakura as they looked at him. Red-faced, Kiba turned towards Naruto with a glare as he clenched his fists. Why you? Naruto uncaringly shrugged his shoulders. You did that on your own, dude, don't blame me, he said before smirking and turning to look at Kiba's dog, who was just laying there while looking at Kiba with clear exasperation. Hey, Akamaru, I think you need to put a better leash on your human. He's getting out of hand, he said. The Kushina part of him couldn't resist. They immediately set the others into a laughing fit. That's it, exclaimed Kiba before lunging at Naruto with a left punch towards his face contorted in anger and hatred as his intentions to cause bodily harm to Naruto were clear. Instead, it didn't go quite as he planned. In a smooth and swift movement, Naruto grabbed Choji by the back of his shirt with his right hand and leaned himself back in Choji, who yelped in surprise as his chips flew all over the place because of it, in order to avoid Kiba's punch and prevent Choji from being hit. Then, with Kiba overextended and partially over his desk and in front of him, Naruto grabbed the back of the Inuzuka's head with his left hand and brought it down to smack it against the desk. A sickening crunch was heard as Kiba's face met the wooden desk. No one was laughing now. Everyone was looking at Naruto with wide eyes, even Shikamaru, who was forced to rise up due to the commotion. Naruto released the back of Choji's shirt and looked at the Akamichi heir with an apologetic expression on his face. Sorry about your chips, man. I'll get you some later, he said and smiled when Choji just nodded dumbly at him. Naruto's expression then turned serious when he heard Kiba's muffled pained groan and he carelessly pulled his head up, showing his broken nose and the blood covering the lower half of his face. You have to be more careful, man. I think you should go to the infirmary and get that checked out, said Naruto before releasing Kiba. With tears visibly in the corner of his eyes, Kiba whimpered as he reached to cup his broken nose and try to stop some of the bleeding with his hand. Without looking at anyone, he quickly ran out of the room, Akamaru hot on his tail whimpering in concern. Naruto looked down at the smear of blood and mucus on the desk in front of him before grimacing. It got dirty. I'm not cleaning it though, he said before inching his chair back a bit as if to emphasize how disgusted he was. Everyone just stared. That was so beeping hot, muttered Ino breathlessly. Yeah, agreed Sakura in a similar fashion. Was the sound of agreement that came from Hinata. Naruto could only smirk. XXXXXXXXXX, an hour later. Eventually, Kiba returned with his nose set back and bandages wrapped around his head with gauze to control the bleeding. He had refused to look at everyone. This resulted in the CL beep room possessing a somewhat tense atmosphere due to no one being able of keeping what Naruto did out of their heads. It stayed like that until the Jonin sensei arrived. Naruto ignored most of them as they were here for the teams formed by the run-in-the-mill students. He, however, focused in two of them for entirely different reasons. One of them was a fair-skinned woman of slender build. She had long black untamed hair reaching her upper back and very unique eyes that are red in color with an additional ring in them. She wore makeup consisting of red lipstick and purple eyeshadow. Her outfit consisted of a red mesh armor blouse with only the right sleeve visible. Over it, she wore a very broad material which resembled bandages with a pattern on it similar to those of rose thorns. Her hands and upper thighs were also wrapped in bandages and she wore the Konoha forehead protector and regular shinobi sandals black in color. She smiled beautifully and Naruto noticed the small, discreet wave she exchanged with Hinata, whom also smiled at her. My name is Kurenai Yuhi. I'm here for Team 8, she said and she looked a bit disappointed when Hinata wasn't one of the three that stood up, but she quickly shook it off. Follow me, please. There is much we have to talk about. So that's the Kurenai Enko-chan told me about. Her description didn't do her justice. And her body reminded me of Ino's, just way more mature. I definitely approve, thought Naruto himself, smiling when the black-haired beauty sent an interested look his way. So that's Naruto Uzumaki, huh? Enko speaks highly of him. I'll have to keep an eye on him to see for myself what Enko sees in him, she thought to herself, recalling all the praises Enko sang to him the time they met each other. She knew that they were sleeping together and that he had moved in with her at Enko's insistence. Even though she had never seen her best friend this happy, she still had to make sure herself that he was the right guy for her. Kiba, visibly excited, Shino and Sakura, who waved goodbye to her two friends, followed after her as they left the CL beep room. The next Jonin of interest was a tall man, with brown eyes, olive skin, short black spiky hair, and a beard. His clothing consisted of the standard Konoha ninja uniform with the sleeves rolled up halfway, flak jacket, regular shinobi sandals and forehead protector. He also wore a sash that had the kanji for fire marked on it around his waist, a pair of black bangles, and bandages wrapped around the arms of his sleeves. An unlit cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth, the man spoke. "I am Asuma Sarutobi. Team 10, follow me," he said simply. Ino groaned. "This guy is a smoker. Kill me, please," she said before standing up and hugging Hinata goodbye. She, along with Shikamaru, who was dragging his feet and muttering about troublesome blondes, and Choji, who had pulled out another bag of chips and was contentedly eating them, followed after Asuma as they left the CL beep room. That left Naruto, Hinata and Sasuke as the only ones in the room. It's not like Kakashi to be late, thought Naruto to himself after a few minutes of waiting in silence. According to Minato's and Kushina's memories of him, Kakashi was rather stern and aloof while at the same time being a stickler for the rules, even though after Obito's death he became more committed to teamwork. However, he had to take into consideration that there were 15 years between today and the last time he, as Minato and Kushina, saw Kakashi. Who knows what has transpired in that amount of time? Eventually, Naruto just shrugged his shoulders and stood up. This got the attention of Hinata and Sasuke, the latter of whom just glanced at him before turning back to stare out of the window. Hinata, for her part, just blushed prettily when Naruto turned towards her and smiled. She panicked a bit when he began to make his way towards her. "Oh, Kami. He's coming here, calm down, Hinata. You've got this. Just breath and be you," she thought frantically, repeating the last thought over and over again like a mantra. Naruto could feel her nervousness and happiness mixed with excitement and a bit of lust as he approached her. He heard her heartbeat quickening considerably for a moment before she took a deep breath and began to calm down. He knew that she was attracted to him, as were Ino and Sakura apparently as well, and that going by their conversation he didn't need to do much, if anything at all, to eventually beep and make the three of them his. That didn't mean, however, that he couldn't be proactive and hopefully speed up the process significantly. "Hey, Hinata. What's up? May I seat here?" he asked her with a bright smile as he signaled the seat right next to her. Hinata returned his smile with a smile of her own. "Hello, Naruto-kun. Of course, you may seat," she said kindly before answering his first question. "And I am doing very well, thanks for asking. How about you?" she asked him curiously, trying her damnedest to make her blush recede without too much success. Naruto smiled and leaned back into his seat. "I'm doing great. You can't imagine how glad I am that we finally became genin. I swear if I had to listen to one more lecture from Iruka-sensei I would have pulled off my hair," he admitted without shame. Hinata giggled at his exaggeration. "I don't think it was that bad, Naruto-kun," she said before laughing again at the raised eyebrow he sent her way. "But I have to admit I'm quite happy to have graduated too. I am a bit nervous, though," she admitted, her blush intensifying as she said this. Naruto blinked as he looked at her. "Nervous? Why?" Hinata looked away as her embarrassment became too much. "I don't know if I am good enough," she admitted. Ino and Sakura might have done wonders when it came to Hinata's self-confidence as a woman, but when it came to her abilities as a kunoichi, she still had some work to be done. Realizing this, Naruto decided to start working on correcting that. "You were joking, right?" he deadpanned, sighing when she timidly shook her head. "For Kami's sake, Hinata. You were one of the two who graduated with the highest score. Not only that, but I'm pretty sure you were better than me at taijutsu and your chakra control is better than mine by leaps and bounds." As a matter of fact, Naruto trailed off before leaning in and whispering into Hinata's ear. "I think that you are better than his royal broodness over there." Feeling him whispering to her, Hina shuddered and goosebumps appeared all over arms and neck as she got so red she was about to faint. To prevent that from happening, she focused on his words. There's no way that's true, Naruto-kun. I know I'm not as good as you at taijutsu and the only reason my chakra control is better than yours is because you have so much of it." Naruto just gave her a thoughtful look, inwardly amused that Hinata didn't try to deny his claims of her being better than the Uchiha. Is that so? I think we'll have to spar and see who's better. Hinata, steadily calming down, nodded her head in agreement. Okay. For the next 2 hours, Naruto and Hinata continued to talk with one another, with Naruto trying to learn more about her while teasing her and trying to build her confidence in her abilities at the same time. Hinata, for her part, was having so far the best day of her life. Not only was she on the same team as her crush, but she was talking, and dare she say it, lightly flirting with him after he had sought her out to make conversation. She had admired Naruto from afar for some time now, so she knew more than a few things about him, but now, talking with him, she felt like the pirate that found his lost treasure. Eventually, Kakashi arrived, walking through the door normally as if he had not arrived 2 hours late. He was a tall man with fair skin, spiky silver hair oriented to his left side, dark gray eyes and a relaxed, heavy-lidded expression if his one visible eye was anything to go by, since his left eye was covered by his forehead protector and everything from the nose down was covered by a face mask. He wore a green flak jacket, dark blue pants, and a dark blue long-sleeve shirt. He also wears fingerless gloves with metal plates on the backhand. Kakashi lazily swept his eyes over whom he supposed were the hopeful members of his new team. He first looked at the annoyed Sasuke, who was glaring daggers at him, before turning towards the other two, who had been talking at the same time. They waged what looked like a rather intense war of thumbs, with the Hyuga girl looking very red in the face for some reason. He suppressed the shock he felt when he saw how much Naruto now resembled his sensei. He looks like a carbon copy. Sandaime-sama understated the resemblance. Focus, Kakashi. Remember the mission, he thought to himself before proceeding to address the three genin. My first impression of you is, he trailed off before smiling at them. You're kind of lame. Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes, he said before disappearing in a poof of smoke. Sasuke's entire body twitched before he visibly sighed to calm himself. He grunted before standing up and walking out of the CLB room through the door. Well, that's a thing, deadpanned Naruto before sighing and standing up. Hinata did the same after him. Realizing that he was still holding her hand from their war of thumbs, Naruto gave her a grin. Hold on tight, Hinata. We'll be there in just a second, he warned before a ram seal with his left hand. Hinata gave him a curious look as she subconsciously tightened her hold on his hand when he did so first. What do you mean? Poof. By that? Hinata's eyes widened when she suddenly found herself on top of the roof. Naruto released her hand and smirked a bit smugly. It's something I've been working on in the past week. I think I'm getting the hang of it, he said, trying, and failing, to be humble about it. Sometimes, Kurama's pride was a bit hard to control and it slipped from time to time. Don't you think the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, is a bit dangerous for a newly graduated academy student to practice without supervision? Asked Kakashi as he leaned against the railing while holding an orange book with the words, Icha Icha Paradise, written on the cover in his right hand, his left hand shoved into the left pocket of his pants. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and grinned innocently. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, I always say, he replied simply before giving Kakashi a curious look. So, are you our new sensei then? He asked. Kakashi shrugged and focused back on his book. Yep, he replied, and without looking at them nor even looking up from his book, he motioned towards the steps that were in front of him. Take a seat and let's wait for your other teammates so we can introduce ourselves. Naruto and Hinata exchanged a look before doing as they were told. A few minutes later, Sasuke arrived, and the look he sent Naruto and Hinata, both of whom he was sure had left the CLB room before him, almost sent the blonde into a laughing fit. Naruto felt like he was going to enjoy a lot making Sasuke look and feel dumb. Kakashi snapped his book closed the moment Sasuke took his seat on the steps, noticeably further from where Naruto and Hinata were seating, and he focused on them with his lazy and uninterested gaze. As you might know, my name is Kakashi Hitaki and I have been beepined as your team leader and Jonin sensei. Let's start with introductions. Pale Eyes, you go first, he said, motioning towards Hinata. Hinata blinked. Pale Eyes. What should I say, Hitaki sensei? Ma. Kakashi is fine. I think your name, likes, dislikes, a hobby of yours and dreams for the future should be enough. As an example, he trailed off before giving an eye smile. My name is Kakashi Hitaki. I don't have intention of telling my likes or my dislikes. I have quite a few hobbies. My dreams for the future are none of your business. Something like that, okay? He only told us his name, twice, was the thought going through the minds of the three sweat-dropping genin. Naruto also thought, he really has change. I don't know why, but for some reason he reminds me a bit of Obito Uchiha. Hinata eventually found her composure and gave a small smile. Hello. My name is Hinata Hyuga. I like my sister, Kurenai-sensei and cinnamon rolls. I dislike arrogance and seafood. My hobby is flower pressing. My dream for the future is to have a loving family and become a worthy head for my clan, she said, blushing a bit, before bowing her head a bit formally. Nice dream. Okay, you next, Sunshine, he said, pointing at the brooding Sasuke. Naruto chuckled and Hinata tried her best to suppress her giggles. The Uchiha's entire body twitched due to his annoyance, his hands cupped in front of his mouth hiding his scowl but not his frowning eyebrows. The name is Sasuke Uchiha. I have a lot of dislikes and I don't particularly like anything. I don't have any hobbies. And my dream for the future, no, my ambition is to kill a certain man, he said as his aura became dark and threatening while he glared at nothing. Hinata looked at him with surprised eyes while Naruto just raised an eyebrow. Scary, deadpanned Kakashi before pointing at Naruto. You are up next, Blondie. Your nicknaming skills are lame, Kakashi-sensei, said Naruto with a grin, only receiving an eye smile in return, before he continued to speak. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, ninjutsu, fuinjutsu and strong and beautiful kunoichi, he began, sending a wink to Hinata when he said the last thing, making her go bright red in the face. I dislike beepholes, pricks, people that have sticks shoved up their beepies and the 3 minutes it takes for my ramen to be ready. I like reading about fuinjutsu in my spare time. My dream for the future is to become the Hokage, he declared with a smirk.
Cute, was the only thing Kakashi said, getting a scoff and a childish turn of the head as he sulked, not pouted, from Naruto. Inwardly, however, he felt some relief. It seems like the only thing that changed about him was his appearance and the amount of chakra he has. I will keep a close eye on him in any case for the foreseeable future, but I think that Sandaime-sama's worried were unfounded.
Well, since that is out of the way, I guess I have to tell you about the test that will really determine if you are cut out to be Genin of Konoha, said Kakashi with an air of apathy and boredom around him. Hinata frowned in confusion. Her expression was mirrored by Sasuke, but Naruto merely raised an eyebrow. The blonde knew what this was about, but he still needed to play the part of the clueless Genin. What do you mean, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Hinata. I mean exactly that, pale eyes. The test that you got at the academy was to see who had the potential to become Genin and who doesn't. The Jonin-sensei then give their squads a test to see which ones are really ready to become Genin. This test has a succession rate of 33% for each Genin, and the ones that fail are either sent back to the academy or retired permanently from the shinobi program, said Kakashi seriously as he stared at the three Genin. Hinata gulped. Naruto raised both eyebrows as he internally became amused. So that's what you are going to do, huh? Alright, I'll play by your rules for now. Sasuke got a determined frown on his face. And what are we waiting for? Let's get this done with already, he said. Kakashi shook his head. Sorry, but nope. The test is going to be tomorrow on Training Ground 7 at 8 o'clock in the morning. And why can't we have it now? It's still early, said Sasuke with gritted teeth as he glared at Kakashi as his fist tightened on top of his knees. He was also shaking in place. Naruto wondered if he was constipated. He kind of understood why Sasuke was so annoyed. Unlike him, who had spent his time talking, flirting with and teasing Hinata, Sasuke had done nothing but brood while waiting for Kakashi. It's not like he felt any sympathy for him, but it made his current disposition understandable. Kakashi shrugged. Because I don't feel like it. Sasuke, out of nowhere, screamed in frustration, startling Hinata a bit, whose sweat dropped at Kakashi's answer. Naruto nodded with an accepting expression on his face. That seems like a very good reason to me, he commented with a shrug of his shoulders. Kakashi nodded at the blonde. Thank you for understanding, Blondie, he said before pushing himself to a standing position. Remember to be on time tomorrow. Oh, and another suggestion. Don't have breakfast or you'll puke, said Kakashi before he waved at them and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Sasuke scoffed before standing up and leaving the roof without a word. Naruto looked at Hinata with a raised eyebrow. Should we tell him that he definitely needs to eat breakfast, as it would be stupid not to eat before doing any kind of strenuous physical activity, and our test tomorrow more than likely will involve it? He asked her with a curious expression on his face. Well, Hinata started to say with a conflicted expression on her face. We should tell him since it is the right thing to do, but do you think he will listen to us? Naruto nodded and smiled at her. You are too nice, Hinata. I think that's why I like you so much. For the umpteenth time that day, Hinata got red in the face as she felt like fainting. Teamwork, ish. So, what can you tell me about Kakashi Hitake? Asked Naruto as he laid on his and Enko's bed, said purple-haired woman, being in a state of bliss as she wrapped herself around him and rested her head on his chest. She had been extremely happy when he had come back early before proceeding to make the best of her day off by spending it beeping him through the entire afternoon and most of the night. As he held the seemingly always horny for him woman close, her voluptuous sweaty body against his, Naruto also wasn't complaining at all. Is he the Jonin that was beeping to you and your team? She asked in a happy voice, and when he nodded, she continued speaking in the same fashion. Well, he is arguably the strongest Jonin in the village and Sandaime Sama's unofficial right-hand man. He is proficient in all the ninja arts, but his specialty is Raiden, lightning release. He is known as Copy Ninja no Kakashi, Copy Ninja Kakashi, because he is known to use the Sharingan, Copy Wheel Eye. He hides with his forehead protector to copy the jutsu of his foes when he is fighting them. And unless strictly ordered by the Hokage, Kakashi is always 2 and 3 hours late for everything. He is also a beep who likes to read smut in public. You have your work cut out for you, Naru-kun. Naruto med in thought. He already knew, from his memories as Minato and Kushina, that Kakashi had been the most talented of his generation, and he also had been a hard worker, so the fact that he was the current strongest Jonin wasn't surprising, nor the fact that he had Obito Uchiha's Sharingan and that he used it to make a name for himself. What surprised him was the fact that he apparently was always deliberately late to everything and was a blatant pervert. Is he purposely acting like Obito Uchiha purposely in order to keep his memory alive? Wondered Naruto, as that was the most likely scenario that explained Kakashi's change. While the Minato and Kushina in him was glad that he managed to find a way to cope with the deaths of Obito and Rin, the Kurama in him couldn't start giving enough beeps. Also, as Naruto, who was extremely angry at the man for never attempting to even check on him, Minato and Kushina were also disappointed and angry at him, so that meant that his feelings for Kakashi were more negative in nature. He told us there is going to be an extra test later today. He said, later today, because it was currently a few minutes past midnight. He grabbed a handful of Anko's beep and gave it an affectionate squeeze. Anything you can tell me about it? Anko beeped in delight at his ministrations. Just that no team that has been beeping to him has ever figured it that the test is about teamwork, because he makes sure to put them against each other.
Ah, so, he implements the bell test. That's good to know, he thought before looking down at Anko and giving her a thankful peck on her temple. Thanks, Anko-chan. I'll make sure to have my team work together so we can beep.
Anko smiled at his tender beep and looked up at him. So, who's on your team? She asked before grabbing his semi-hard beep and began to pump it in order to get it ready for the next round. Oh, how she loved his basically unlimited stamina and short recovery time. To her, he was the perfect man for her, and she knew for a fact that he was going to be the perfect man for many other women. Hinata Hyuga, he said, and trailed off with a smile before his face twisted in distaste as he continued. And Sasuke Uchiha. Anko grimaced, stopping her actions for a moment. Ouch. That one is a nasty piece of work. Naruto nodded in agreement, his expression matching hers. Yeah. While he is skilled for a genin, he thinks that his current abilities make him Kami's gift to Konoha. It doesn't help that most of the civilians and some of the ninja beep the earth that he walks on and constantly praise him. He is an arrogant beephole and a prick. Did you know that he lives on a different house as his mother just because she refuses to help him get revenge on his older brother? Anko nodded her head a bit sadly. Yeah. Everyone knows, and most of them take Sasuke's side, not even stopping to put themselves on her shoes. Mikoto is a very nice woman that doesn't deserve what happened to her, she said before smirking and resuming her work on his beep. You know, she is still very beepy and very beautiful. I think you should add her to the list of women you plan to make yours, Naru-kun. I think you are exactly what she needs right now. Naruto grunted and smirked. The thought has crossed my head. It also helps that you want to beep her too, right? Anko gave him a shameless grin. Yup, she agreed without hesitation before giving him a curious look. And what about your other teammate? Hinata? She knew some about the Hyuga heiress from Kurenai, but she wanted to hear Naruto's thoughts on her.
Naruto smiled. Hinata is a sweetheart. She still has some issues regarding her confidence on her abilities as a kunoichi, but I will make sure to work with her on that. He then grinned perversely as he gave Anko's beep a hard squeeze as she began to increase the pace of her pumping of his beep. And guess what? She has a huge crush on me, as do her friends Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno, and the best part. I overheard them and they are more than willing to share.
Anko's eyes momentarily rolled to the back of her head as a mini orgasm rocked her body as Naruto's words sent her imagination into overdrive. She had seen Hinata a few times because of her close relationship with Kurenai and had caught a glimpse of both Ino and Sakura. Needless to say, Anko very much approved. When she regained her senses, a crazed expression of lust appeared on Anko's flushed face as she panted before she straddled Naruto and sunk on his beep with a scream of ecstasy. Beep me. Beep me, you beeping stud. And don't stop until I am in a coma. She screamed as she began to frantically jump up and down the length of his beep, her face contorting stupidly in pleasure with crossed eyes and a silly grin almost splitting her face in two. Naruto grabbed Anko by her round and jiggling beep and began to meet her jumps with thrusts of his own as he grinned up at her. As you wish, Anko-chan. Oh, how glad he was that Nei no longer required sleep to function correctly. XXXXXXXXXX. The next day, even though Anko had told him about Kakashi's habit of being at least 2 hours late for everything, Naruto arrived a few minutes before 8 at Training Ground 7 after first going to TG-43 to leave clones training, which he had failed to do so yesterday. He had already mastered everything he had said to do during that week in order to develop a fighting style that went according to what his level, if he was an unprecedented genius, would be after getting a hold of the Forbidden Scroll for a few hours. He had his clones work further on his chakra control and on the high-speed technique based off the Shunshin that would be geared more towards combat. He also had his clones work on the Kokwamyo no Jutsu, Bringer of Darkness technique, a genjutsu developed by the Naidame Hokage, Tobarama Senju, that didn't require the fine chakra control that most genjutsu required to be performed correctly, meaning that he could eventually do it without achieving mastery of his infinite amount of chakra. And finally, he had his clones work on developing the muscle memory of this body in order to successfully write the amount of seals he now knew thanks to the memories of Minato and Kushina. With the number of clones he put to the task, he knew that it wouldn't take him more than 2 months before he could successfully write every seal they knew without the danger of making a mistake that could result in an explosion. While he could survive even getting his brain destroyed, he didn't want to deal with the annoyance. Anyways, the reason why he arrived early despite knowing that Kakashi would make them wait at least 2 hours was because he wasn't about to leave Hinata alone with Sasuke for that amount of time. That was the kind of torture that he wouldn't wish on anyone. That, he wanted to spend more time with her, both for his own selfish and perverted reasons and to keep on helping her build her confidence. Both Hinata and Sasuke were already there when he arrived. Hinata-chan. Good morning. He greeted her with enthusiasm the moment he approached her. He then turned towards Sasuke, who was leaning against a tree a few feet away. Uchiha. Sasuke barely glanced at him before looking away. HN. Hinata smiled at him and blushed at the affectionate honorific he added to her name. It felt good to hear it coming from him. She was glad that Naruto arrived since the short amount of time she spent alone with Sasuke, who had returned the polite greeting in the same manner he just did Naruto's admittedly neutral greeting, had been spent in very awkward silence. Good morning to you as well, Naruto-kun. How are you? Now completely ignoring Sasuke, Naruto turned towards Hinata and beamed at her. I'm pretty good and excited and ready for whatever Kakashi-sensei. Now that he thought about it, it felt weird to call him that, what with his memories as Minato and the roles used to be reversed. Throws at us. How about you? Hinata nodded. Yeah. I'm well as well, and I think I am also ready for his test, she told him. She was very determined to beep said test too. There was no way in hell that she was going to let the opportunity of being in a team with Naruto for the foreseeable future be jeopardized. This was a dream come true and she was going to do everything in her power to make sure that it stayed a reality. Naruto chuckled, easily deducing her thoughts by sensing her emotions, and smirked mischievously. "I take it that you ate something, right?" he asked, deliberately raising his voice a bit. Hinata nodded, her expression a bit beeped as she covered her mouth to hide her own smile, realizing what Naruto was doing. She made no move to stop him though. "Yeah. I did as well. Did Kakashi-sensei really thought that we would be so stupid as not to eat something before doing any kind of strenuous activity?" Sasuke's entire body twitched and it looked like it was taking all of his willpower to not look at them. Hinata giggled. Naruto snickered. For the next 30 minutes, Naruto and Hinata made idle conversation about every random topic that surged between them as they waited for Kakashi. Knowing that he was going to be late and unwilling to waste his time, Naruto decided to something productive in the meantime. "Well, it looks like today is going to be a repeat of yesterday," deadpanned Naruto when there was a dull in the conversation which he used to make the show of look at the time using the position of the sun. He turned towards Hinata, who nodded in agreement with a frown of her own marring her pretty features. "How about we have that spar we talked about yesterday?" Hinata's eyes widened a bit but she wasn't against the idea. "Would that be prudent?" she asked, worried about their sensei arriving at any moment and that her chances of beeping would decrease if she spent even a small amount of energy before the test. Naruto waved off her concerns. "I don't think it'll be a problem. Something tells me that Kakashi-sensei is going to be just as late as yesterday and I was hoping for a single spar only using taijutsu. I don't think we are going to tire that much," he said, easily deducing her concerns going by her question and sensing her emotions. Hinata thought about it for a moment before smiling and nodding. "If that's the case, okay. Let's spar, Naruto-kun." Naruto grinned and jumped to his feet. "Yosh. Let's see who is better of the two in taijutsu, Hinata-chan," he declared, extending a hand towards her. With a giggle and a nod, Hinata blushed a bit as she gratefully accepted his hand to help her stand up. Sasuke glanced at Naruto and Hinata as they walked away before scoffing and focusing back on his brooding, which involved the many ways in which he would torture Itachi before killing him. Whatever those two got up to was beneath him. As long as they didn't get on his way to gaining the power he needed to kill his older brother and avenge his clan, they could do as they pleased. Back with Naruto and Hinata, the two of them stood a few yards away from each other, each one on their own stance. Hinata was in the base stance of the taijutsu style used by her clan, the Juken, gentle fist, lightly crouching while presenting her left side to Naruto with her hands at the ready. Naruto, for his part, was in his own costume stance, which was the one he felt the most comfortable in after successfully mixing the best and most effective techniques of all the styles he knew to make his own. Naruto's stance consisted in him crouching a little lower than Hinata while also presenting his left side to her. His left arm was extended and hung a bit low at about waist level with his finger relaxed, not completely extended nor completely curled against his palm. His right arm was flexed and slightly tucked into his body with his closed right fist being right beneath his chin. "Ready?" asked Naruto with an excited grin. Hinata nodded with determined expression on her face. "Yes. Go." The two of them shot at each other at speeds that were very high for a newly graduated genin. Naruto decided to perform at the same level he did so when he sparred with Tenten a few days ago. They exchanged the first couple of attacks. Hinata was aiming for his upper body using palm strikes coming from different directions which he deflected and evaded while attempting to strike at her using his fists and elbows which she evaded with just a bit of effort. Then Naruto was forced to step back when out of nowhere, Hinata aimed for his chin with a rising vertical kick. The sole of her high-heeled boots beeping just a few inches in front of his nose and flicking the middle fringe of hair. Naruto watched intently as Hinata slowly lowered her leg from the straight-up position it ended without any effort or strain in her movements. He smirked. My. Aren't you quite flexible, Hinata-chan?" he said with his voice teasing and laced with noticeable innuendo. Hinata's entire face got red and steam poured out of her ears as she struggled not to faint on the spot. In order to get rid of the thoughts that were put into her head, Hinata focused on continuing with the spar. She attacked Naruto once again and this time she mixed in a few kicks along with her palm strikes. Naruto was put on the defensive for a moment as he adjusted to Hinata's new offensive maneuvers. Naruto determined that right now Hinata was at the peak of high genin level and that without enhancing herself with chakra and without her Byakugan, White Eye, activated. If she did that, Naruto wouldn't be surprised if she could easily perform at low, mid-chunin level. How was she not confident in her skills? He didn't know, but he was going to make sure she realized how good of a kunoichi she actually was. Naruto then added his own kicks to the mix and it was Hinata's turn to be the defensive player this time around. She was not surprised to see that Naruto was better than her at taijutsu, even if his own style wasn't exactly as elegant and orthodox as her own, but she guessed that was what made it so effective. Its beauty laid on how unpredictable it was and how seamlessly Naruto could change between forms and deliver a completely random attack. Hinata ducked under a sweeping backhanded punch and attempted a double palm strike towards Naruto's chest, only for the blonde to avoid it by leaning back and to the right. A normal person would have retaliated with a left roundhouse kick, but Naruto responded with a sharp front kick that caught her in the abdomen and forced her back while she coughed a bit. What surprised Hinata was how much she had lasted. Naruto's spars back in the academy never lasted more than 30 seconds, with only Sasuke managing to last that much against him. Naruto always ended his fights fast since very few could keep up with his speed, reflexes and unpredictability. She had never had the luxury of sparring with him because their teachers for some reason always pitied boys against boys and girls against girls, so she only knew of his skill by watching spar and occasionally train when she not stalked him. So, she knew that he wasn't holding back. If anything, he was significantly better since the last time she saw him fight almost a month ago. Hinata yelped as her foot was swooped underneath her when she tried to hit Naruto's temple with a kick and ducked under it while at the same time twirling around and striking at her with a low sweeping kick. Some air was forced out of her lungs when her back hit the ground sharply. She blinked when she felt something touching her forehead gently and she moved her eyes to the right to see Naruto kneeling at her side with his knuckles, which were wrapped in bandages, pressed against her forehead. "I win," said Naruto with a grin before standing up and presenting his hand to her. Hinata sighed and nodded with a smile of her own and graciously accepted the hand Naruto offered to help her stand up. She turned a bit red when Naruto, innocently, patted off the dust of her clothes. "There we go. And I guess this proves what I told you yesterday about your skills." Hinata forgot her embarrassment as she heard Naruto's words. "Naruto-kun, but I lost." "That actually proves what I said about you being better than me," she replied. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her. "Yeah. I won. But you lasted 5 straight minutes against me. No one in our graduation CLB can claim that, not even his royal broodness, who is the other one to have graduated with the highest score," said Naruto, grinning when Hinata giggled as his nickname for Sasuke. "And that was in a taijutsu-only match without using chakra. I bet if you had your Byakugan activated I would have been toasted." Hinata averted her gaze in embarrassment but nodded her head. "I guess you have a point, Naruto-kun." She trailed off before looking back at him with a serious expression that was slightly offset by her reddened cheeks. "But, what about if you use chakra as well? I am pretty sure the technique you used yesterday to move us from the CLB room in a blink of an eye," she retorted. Naruto clicked his tongue and raised both hands in the air. Busted," he groused with a pout that had Hinata giggling once again. Naruto grinned sheepishly. "You caught me." "No. The Shunshin no Jutsu is not the only thing I learned. Let's just say that if Kakashi-sensei pushes us enough, you'll be seeing the things I learned just by having the Forbidden Scroll for a few hours." Hinata smiled a bit indulgently at him. "I will be looking forward to it." "All right," said Naruto with a clap before pointing back to where they had been before deciding to have the spar. "What do you say we go back and watch how annoyed the King of Brooding Darkness gets every minute Kakashi-sensei fails to arrive?" He grinned mischievously. Hinata tried hard not to laugh but she ended covering her chuckles with her hands. "Okay," she agreed with a nod. XXXXXXXXXXX. 2.5 hours later. "Yo," greeted Kakashi simply and lazily as he arrived in a poof smoke, crouching in one of the 3 wooden poles that were on the center of TG7, holding Ika Ika Paradise on his right hand and sending a 2-fingered salute in the direction of the 3 genin with his left hand. "How are you 3 doing in this fine and wonderful morning?" he asked them with a matching voice. A visibly angry Sasuke, judging by his scowl, red face and numerous throbbing veins, shot to his feet. "It's almost noon. You told us to be early and you made us wait 3 beeping hours." He screamed at the top of his lungs. If there was one thing Sasuke hated was for others to make him waste time he could have spent gaining power. Kakashi looked up from his book with a raised eyebrow. Is that so? I'm deeply sorry then. I got lost in the road of life and time becomes meaningless when that happens. He excused himself after turning back to his book, his voice uninterested and completely unapologetic. Sasuke gave a wordless scream of frustration and anger as he reached for a kunai. While Hinata looked at the Uchiha with a disturbed look, Naruto chuckled and gave Kakashi a thumb up. I give it a 7 out of 10, Kakashi-sensei. You'll have to give a better excuse next time, he said. He decided that he will behave somewhat neutral towards Kakashi. That way he could maintain his image even if the Minato in him wanted to give him a harsh reprimand while the Kushina in him wanted to beat his beep until he begged for forgiveness. Kakashi gave him an eye smile. Thank you. I'll make sure to work harder, he chirped with a determined nod of his head. Hinata noticed that Sasuke looked ready to seriously attempt to murder both Kakashi and Naruto, so she intervened before things escalated unpleasantly, for Sasuke, that is. Kakashi-sensei. What are we going to be doing today? She asked him. She didn't really mind Kakashi's tardiness if she was honest to herself. It allowed her more time to spend interacting with Naruto uninterrupted even if Sasuke was only a few feet away. He was a non-factor anyways. At Hinata's question, Kakashi snapped his book closed and hopped off from the pole. Ah, yes. I'm glad you asked, Hinata, he said before reaching into his pouch and producing 2 bells that jingled innocently as they dangled from his fingers. The 3 genin looked at the bells with varying degrees of curiosity. You 3 are going to try and take these bells from me. To beep. Each one of you needs at least 1 bell. Sasuke felt the need to point out the obvious. There's only 2 bells and 3 of us. Naruto rolled his eyes. No, really? I didn't notice at all. Sasuke's response was to glare at the blonde for a few moments before snorting derisively. Kakashi gave a cheery eye smile. Of course, there is only 2 bells. That means that only 2 of you will beep and that is if you even manage to get the bells. The one that doesn't get a bell will be sent back to the academy, he said with a matching tone as he used the cord that connected the 2 bells to strap them to the right side of his vest at waist level. Naruto and Hinata exchanged uneasy looks while Sasuke got a determined one after sending a quick glare to both the blonde and the brunette. With his eye smile still in place, Kakashi continued to speak in that completely fake cheery tone of his. Use every method you deem necessary to acquire a bell from me. Remember to come at me with the intent to kill, otherwise, you won't get a bell. You have an hour to do so. That means that you have till noon. A worried look appeared on Hinata's face. Intent to kill? Isn't that going too far for just a test? Thinking that her concern was cute, Kakashi chuckled before retorting. I'm a Jonin, Hinata. I think I can handle anything you 3 could throw at me. Now, start, he shouted and he noticed how the 3 genin jumped into the woods around the clearing so they could hide. He looked around for a few moments before nodding in approval. Their stealth skills are solid at least. That's good, he said before pulling out his book so he could continue reading. With Hinata, the Hyuga pressed her back against the back of the 3 she was using to hide from Kakashi as she ever so slightly tilted her just enough to look at him without the risk of him seeing her, which was possible thanks to all the foliage and the shadows they casted between them. I can't believe only 2 of us will have the chance to be genin under Kakashi-sensei, she thought with a frown as she looked at the silver-haired Jonin, not knowing how she felt about him reading so uncaringly while in the middle of a test she felt was extremely important to her. This might make me an awful person, but if I had to choose, I would actually prefer Naruto-kun over Uchiha-san. However, I think I've never heard of. Hinata's thoughts were brought to a halt when Naruto suddenly dropped in front of her. Thankfully, she didn't scream. Her reaction was for her body to stiffen, her eyes to widen and to get red in the face. Hey, Hinata-chan, he whispered to her after mirroring her position at her side, the 3 she had been using being wide enough to hide both of them without issues. Hinata took a few moments to calm down before giving her crush a curious look. Naruto-kun? What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be thinking on how to get the bells from Kakashi-sensei? She asked, some urgency leaking into her voice. If he wasn't doing so, then the chances of her being in a team with him decreased drastically, to say the least. That's the thing. I have been thinking about it and, Naruto trailed off as he took a quick look at Kakashi, who was still reading without a care in the world, before he focused on Hinata. I believe he is trying to trick us and is deliberately pitting us against each other. Hinata's eyes widened a bit when she heard that. How so? I mean, have you ever heard of a shinobi team former with 3 members? Hinata shook her head at Naruto's question. Exactly. Me neither. Not only that, but yesterday he said that each genin has a 33% chance of P-beeping. However, if the 3 of us work together. Hinata's eyes widened further in realization. We have 99% chance of P-beeping. She whispered exclaimed with a low gasp before frowning in confusion. If the point of this test is to determine whether or not we can work together, why is he putting us against each other on purpose? And telling us to not eat anything as well? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I think Kakashi-sensei is just a sadistic bastard that enjoys trolling others, he said, getting a sweat drop from Hinata since that was an actual possibility, before growing serious. As for why making us go against one another, I believe he also wants to test our ability to pay attention to detail. He did drop the hint about the possibility each one of us has of P-beeping, so there's that. Hinata nodded. That makes sense. In that case, I'm willing to work together to get the bells, Naruto-kun. But, she trailed off as a conflicted expression appeared on her face. Naruto understood what her concerns were right away. How are we going to get Sasuke to not only understand the real purpose of the test but also willing to work with us to get the bells? Hinata nodded. Yes. Uchiha-san is not the most understanding individual. On top of that, he is already angry because of Kakashi-sensei's lateness, and he also has yet to eat something today, which doesn't help either, she pointed out. Naruto blinked. So him being late and telling us not to eat does have a meaning other than him just being in Beeple, he mused before shaking his head at Hinata's quizzical look. By doing that, he's trying to make us incapable of thinking clearly and or deeply if we become too worked up before the test even begins. It's kind of genius, actually. The mother of all beep moves, certainly, but genius nonetheless. Hinata just nodded in understanding and agreement. After a few moments of thinking, Naruto grinned a mischievous smile that had Hinata's heart quickening a bit. I guess we will have to work together with Sasuke without him knowing and trick Kakashi-sensei into thinking that we actually are. Hinata could only blink repeatedly as she tilted her head cutely to the side, expressing her confusion. XXXXXXXXXX. 15 minutes before noon. Sasuke eventually got sick of waiting. He had been counting on one of the other two, mostly Naruto than Hinata going by their personalities, to make a move first so he could get a glimpse of Kakashi's fighting style before attempting to get a bell himself. He knew that none of them would be able to get a bell against a Jonin and that he had the highest chances of getting them himself if he saw some of Kakashi's style first before attacking. Sasuke conveniently forgot that he had never been able to win against Naruto in a spar, so, if the blonde was incapable of getting a bell, then he was even less capable. Arrogance and superiority complexes had a special way of blinding people, Uchiha or not. The first thing Sasuke did was to attack Kakashi by throwing kunai and shuriken from his hiding position. He wasn't exactly surprised when Kakashi used the kawarimi to substitute himself with a log. The moment Kakashi appeared once again, still reading his book, Sasuke jumped out of his hiding spot and glared at Kakashi. You aren't taking this seriously, he said while gritting his teeth. Why should I? Wondered Kakashi with actually honest curiosity as he flipped a page from his book. You 3 are just newly minted genin while I am seasoned jonin. There is no need for me to take you seriously, he stated, not an ounce of arrogance in his lazy tone. He was simply stating a fact. Grunted Sasuke as his glare intensified while slowly lowering into a stance. Don't lump me in with those two. I'm different. Kakashi tilted his head to the side curiously. Is that so? As far as I know, Hinata got a few more points than you in your final scores and you have never beaten Naruto in a spar before, he commented before shrugging his shoulders. If anything, you are the one that has the least chances to get a bell. Quickly growing angry at Kakashi's words, Sasuke threw another set of shuriken and kunai at him. With a sight, Kakashi easily evaded him. You will never be able to hit me with. His words caught in their throat when Sasuke quickly closed the distance between them at speeds that no genin that just graduated had any right of having and forced him to quickly forego his book to block a kick aimed for his head. I would expect this kind of speeds from a seasoned genin about to be promoted to chunin. He thought to himself as took a hold of Sasuke's leg. only for Sasuke to twist himself and try to deliver a downwards vertical kick also aimed for Kakashi's forehead, forcing the silver-haired Jonin to block it as well, leaving his front wide open. Sasuke smirked as he quickly reached for the jiggling bells strapped to Kakashi's vest. Quickly realizing his intentions, Kakashi disengaged himself from Sasuke by pushing him and also jumping back, looking at the Uchiha in a new light. His taijutsu is also very solid. I shouldn't be surprised, after all, he is. Kakashi trailed off as his eyes widened a bit when he saw Sasuke skillfully going through a set of 6 familiar hand seals. What? He already has enough chakra to do that. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Fire release. Grand Fireball technique, declared Sasuke as he made a circle with his index finger and thumb and put them right in front of his mouth as he spewed air from his mouth. He felt glee at the wide eye from Kakashi. And that was when things took a turn outside of Sasuke's plan and of Kakashi's expectations. Uchiha-san. Good job on distracting him, exclaimed Hinata as she jumped out from the foliage, her pupils more distinct and the veins near her temple bulged, indicating that her Byakugan was activated. She quickly ran directly towards Kakashi and the incoming ball of fire that was bigger than the Jonin with no visible concern for her safety. Surprised, Kakashi turned towards her. What? They are actually working together. And she is even faster than Sasuke. He screamed in his mind as he jumped back, his plan of using the Doden Mogaragakure no Jutsu, Earth Release. Hiding like a mole technique, to evade Sasuke's attack foregone in the wake of Hinata's surprising and aggressive offensive. Hinata easily adjusted her trajectory in order to keep going straight at Kakashi, who braced himself. The fireball hit the ground with an explosion that ruffled their hairs and clothes and made the bells jingle multiple times as well. Just as Hinata reached Kakashi, engaged him in taijutsu. If Kakashi felt the need to pay attention when he faced Sasuke, he was no force to take Hinata seriously. Kakashi was surprised even further when he felt himself actually focusing and trying to dodge Hinata's palm strikes mixed in with some kicks. Her beepuled shockingly ferocious, which was at odds with her previously gentle and well-mannered disposition but was also somehow fitting with her currently focused expression enhanced by her activated Byakugan. Kakashi completely avoided every attack from her hands and blocked her kicks. I can't allow those to hit me, he thought to himself as he continued to evade her attacks with some effort on his part. And to think some years ago she was considered a failure, what happened? Kakashi's thoughts were interrupted when suddenly, with a triumphant look on her face, Hinata stopped her beepuled abruptly, only giving Kakashi half a second to wonder what was happening as she jumped back before 4 silver chains glowing with a purplish aura exploded from right beneath him, cracking the ground before they wrapped themselves tightly around his arms and legs, keeping him in place. What the? Chains? How in the? Kakashi thought frantically as he looked around only to see a triumphantly smirking Naruto kneeling a few yards away from him with his palms pressed flat to the ground. Kakashi tried to use a Kawarimi to escape but found out he couldn't mold his chakra as he wanted. His eye widened further. They're suppressing my chakra? That means these are chakra chains. Quite nifty, wouldn't you say so, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Naruto rhetorically as he produced 2 more chains from his back that wrapped themselves around Kakashi's torso. The chains wrapped around the Jonin's arms and legs were released and returned back to the ground. A moment later Naruto stood up and made a show of cleaning his hands of the dirt of the ground. I think we demonstrated enough teamwork for you to beat us, right? A seething Sasuke, who had been about to scream in rage at Naruto and Hinata, paused as his eyes widened at the question. What? Kakashi raised his one visible eyebrow at Naruto. What are you talking about, Naruto? The point of this test is for 2 of the 3 to get the bells. Teamwork? I never said anything about that, he said, even though internally he was extremely pleased. This kid. Naruto rolled his eyes as he approached the restrained Kakashi. Come off of it, Kakashi-sensei. We were onto you from the beginning. Everyone knows that shinobi teams have no less than 4 members. It's been always like that. And you told us yesterday that each one of us has a 33% chances of beeping the test, meaning that if we worked together, we would have 99% chance of success, contributed Hinata with a small smile as she also approached, her Byakugan no longer activated.
Yeah, when we realized that, His Royal Broodness here offered himself to act as a distraction and to also make you believe that we were working together, Since if it was him it would be believable considering that it is obvious that Hinata-chan and I get along very well while he just does his own thing and doesn't even talk to us.
After that, it was just a matter of Hinata-chan pushing you until I could use my chains to capture you, which actually worked. Even I am surprised at that," said Naruto with a self-satisfied grin. Though he knew that the only reason they worked was not only because they caught Kakashi completely by surprise but because he had not taken them seriously from the beginning. Is that so?" asked Kakashi, looking at Sasuke. The Uchiha realized that the words of Hinata and Naruto made sense and he reluctantly, after seeing the pointed looks he got from the two of them, nodded his head while crossing his arms. I see. In that case, Kakashi trailed off ominously, the effect diminished by the fact that he was still wrapped in Naruto's chains, before giving a genuine eye smile. Team 7P BPs with flying colors. Naruto grinned. Yosh, he pumped his fist to the air victoriously. Hinata giggled happily as she clapped her hands. Inwardly giving a sigh of relief, Sasuke smirked.
Naruto, can you please release me?" asked Kakashi after a few moments of watching his new official students celebrating. Naruto looked back at him from where he was high-fiving a flustered, but clearly happy, Hinata before adopting a sheepish expression as his chains unwrapped from around him and retracted back into him. "Can I ask how you learned to from chains out of your chakra, Naruto?" They might look different, but he would recognize Kushina's adamantine sealing chains anywhere.
Kakashi also noticed the envious look Sasuke sent in Naruto's way the moment he asked the question. Naruto blinked at the question before grinning. "Well, one day a few years ago I was just training how to channel my chakra throughout my entire body, just how they taught us in the academy, when out of the sudden I sprouted one of those chains from my back. I've practicing with them ever since," he said, his voice more than a little bit smug. Inwardly, however, he amusedly thought that he was not going to tell him that he knew how to do it because a part of him was literally Kushina Uzumaki, who had been a master in their usage. Kakashi raised his only visible eyebrow. "And you didn't tell anyone about them because?" Naruto crossed his arms and smirked. "A ninja has to have one trick or two up their sleeves, right? I wouldn't have been able to catch you off guard otherwise." Kakashi paused before nodding. "Fair point," he said before adopting a serious expression that had the three genin focusing on him. "And yes, the point of this test was to not only determine whether or not you could work together, but also to see if you were capable of paying attention to detail and to what conclusions you could get with just snippets of information. I want you to remember these words for the rest of your lives. In the ninja world, those who break the rules are trash, that's true, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. And a ninja that can't look underneath the underneath is a dead ninja." It was only thanks to the inhuman self-control that he got from Minato that he was able to stop himself from attacking Kakashi due to the hypocrisy of his words and even daring to tell them to his face just because as far as he was aware, Naruto didn't know who his parents were nor what the relationship was between them and Kakashi. The Kushina and Naruto in him wanted to beat him into a bloody pulp until he begged for the mercy of death, which would be denied, and the Kurama in him felt like taking a nap. Instead, Naruto made the show of seriously thinking about his deep words, before nodding in agreement. Hinata seemed to do the same at his side. Sasuke, for his part, just gave an obvious shallow nod of his head. Kakashi gave the three genin an eye smile. "All right, we are done for today. Tomorrow we begin our duties and training as the official Team 7. From now on we will meet every day at the bridge you crossed to reach the training ground at 8 o'clock in the morning. Yane," he said with a cheery wave before leaving in a poof of smoke and swirling leaves. Without a word, Sasuke shoved his hands into the pockets of his pants, turned around and began to walk away. Naruto and Hinata watching him go with some incredulity on their faces. Naruto glared at his back. "Yeah, you're welcome for basically making you pee beep," he shouted and watched as Sasuke paused for a moment before continuing to walk. Naruto clicked his tongue in annoyance. "Prick. I'm pretty sure I'll never get along with that beephole." Hinata smiled gently as she patted his shoulder in a comforting manner. "Don't worry about it, Naruto-kun. The important thing is that we pee beeped. And besides, we don't necessarily have to get along to work effectively together, right?" Naruto nodded before turning towards Hinata with a thankful expression on his face. "Yeah. Thank Kami we are on the same team together, Hinata-chan. I really don't know what would do without you," he said, making a show of sniffling as if he was about to cry. Hinata's face became red when she heard his words. She averted her eyes and began to poke her two index fingers together. "I'm also glad that we are on the same team, Naruto-kun," she said timidly, growing even more flustered if that was possible. Naruto grinned at her. "Ah, Hinata-chan. You are so cute," he declared before wrapping an arm around her shoulders and bringing her close. "Wanna get ramen to celebrate? My treat." Steam pouring out of her ears, Hinata could only give a small nod as she refused to look at Naruto in the face. As Naruto dragged her away, arm still around her shoulder, Hinata could only wonder if this could be considered a date. XXXXXXXXXX. Konohagakure Ninja Academy, Administrative Division, Hokage's office. Hiruzen looked at the 9 jonin standing in a straight line in front of his desk. He could tell that most of them were surprised by the fact that Kakashi was actually there on time, but considering that he had explicitly told him to be on time for this meeting, it was to be expected. Though he could do without Kakashi reading Icha Icha Paradise in front of him, he had an image to maintain as the Sandaime Hokage, and he couldn't have one of his subordinates tempting him to pull out his own copy. "Report," he stated simply. "Team 1 failed, Team 2 failed. Team 3 failed, Team 4 failed, Team 5 failed. Team 6 failed." Kakashi stepped forward when it was his turn. "Team 7P beeped," he said simply, not looking up from his book, before stepping back. Kurenai also stepped forward. "Team 8 Pa." She stopped herself abruptly before looking back at Kakashi with wide eyes. "Wait, what?" The silver-haired Jonin raised an eyebrow when he noticed that everyone there, except the Hokage, was giving him bewildered looks. "What?"
Kurenai was the one to point one the reason why everyone was looking at him like he was a strange creature, which, in their line of work, was saying something.
"For the first time since teams began to be beepine to you, you actually p-beeped one of them. Because of your track record, no one thought this day would come," she said, glaring at him for daring to read Icha Icha Paradise in front of her. If she couldn't read her own copy in front of everyone because of social standards, then he shouldn't be able to do so, damn it. "Ah. Well, yeah. Those 3 actually have what it takes to become genin of Konoha," he said simply with a shrug of his shoulders. "Hey," scoffed one of the jonin that had stated his team had failed. "I bet it was because of the Uchiha. They say the kid's a genius." "Actually, no," denied Kakashi with a shake of his head. "They lead me to believe that reaching the conclusion of the test being about teamwork and looking underneath the underneath was reached in conjunction between the 3 of them." Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. "They led you to believe?" Kakashi nodded. "Yeah. I'm positive that the ones that discovered the true meaning of the test were Naruto and Hinata, and they took advantage of Sasuke attacking me first to make it seem like they were working together with Sasuke supposedly being the distraction. The only reason I p-beeped them was because Sasuke went with their ruse the moment he realized the meaning of the test after Naruto and Hinata told me how they figured it out." More than one was looking at Kakashi with wide eyes. For newly graduated genin, that was damned impressive. Kakashi shrugged again before focusing back on his book. While outwardly Kakashi portrayed himself as he always did, aloof, lazy and uncaring, inwardly he cringed at what the likely reaction would be if they found out that he was actually caught off guard and captured by the admittedly effective work of 2 newly graduated genin, no matter how talented and skillful they were. "It seems like I have to step up my training. Evidently, I've been slacking off," he thought to himself. He was considered the strongest jonin in the village after all. Hiruzen had a small, proud smile on his face. "It gladdens me to know that our future genin have such potential," he said before looking at his son. "Kurenai, please, continue with the report." Asuma shook off the surprise brought by Kakashi's words. Yeah, Hokage same. Team 8P beeped. Shino and Sakura also managed to deduce the true meaning of the test and managed to get Kiba to work with them, though he needed a considerable amount of convincing. Shino and Kiba show solid proficiency in their clan techniques, and Sakura already shows talent for genjutsu. Hiruzen nodded at her and he waited until she stepped back before looking at his son, Asuma. After giving Kakashi another disturbed look, Asuma stepped up and shrugged his shoulders. Team 10P beeped. "Did you expect any differently?" Shikamaru quickly deduced the true meaning of the test, and while Choji took almost no effort to convince to go with his plan, The only reason Ino went with it was because she saw and agreed with the reasoning behind Shikamaru's words. They managed to work together decently enough on their first try, so I beeped them. Despite Ino not exactly respecting Shikamaru and Choji because of their lack of work ethic, I believe that with enough time they will live up to what their fathers accomplished, he said before stepping back. Hiruzen nodded. Thank you. It seems like we have a good batch of frontliners this year, he said, looking at Kakashi, Kurenai and Asuma. Make sure to get them ready to start taking C-rank missions outside the village in less than 2 months' time. As for the others, they will be sent to the reserve division in order to determine what roles within the village infrastructure they are best suited for and give them more specialized training. Despite failing to demonstrate the ability to work together and pay attention to details, the genin that failed the test of their Bipine Jonin were still capable of successfully molding chakra, meaning that they could be of use elsewhere. The ones that managed to beat the test of their Bipine Jonin were the ones regularly going on missions outside the village, making them the ones that stood out the most and that had the highest rate of growth. That was how things worked since the foundation of Konohagakure after all. The 9 Jonin nodded their heads. Hiruzen nodded back at them. Good. You are all dismissed, except you Kakashi. We have a few other things to discuss. The others didn't bat an eye at this, knowing that Kakashi was the unofficial right-hand man of the Hokage, so they simply bowed and left. The moment they went alone, Hiruzen gave Kakashi his most serious look so far. Your beepessment? Expression equally as serious, Kakashi answered. This is only my initial observation, but I believe there's nothing wrong with Naruto. Quite the opposite, actually. You said that he showed some animosity towards you after the ordeal with the Forbidden Scroll. He asked and Hiruzen nodded, remembering how uncharacteristically formal Naruto had been with him the times he interacted with him. I think some anger on his part was to be expected, considering that whom he thought as a grandfather deliberately withheld sensitive information from him and that he literally almost died when he found out about said information. Hiruzen thought about it and nodded in agreement, sighing as he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. I see. We will have to keep an eye of him regardless, but, are you sure he won't be a threat to Konoha? He asked, just to be sure. Kakashi shook his head. No, I don't think so. His disposition was fairly cheerful and positive both yesterday and today, not even getting annoyed by my antics. He even said that his dream was still to become the Hokage, though I suspect that his reasons might have changed with this new development. How so? I am sure, but it is likely they did, he said before pausing and giving the Sandaime a serious look. The one that worries me is Sasuke, actually. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. How so? He knew that Sasuke held a deep hatred for his brother, Itachi, for killing his entire clan except for Sasuke himself and their mother, Mikoto. But for Kakashi to deem him more worrisome than Naruto, whom they both believed could lead to Konoha's destruction, was something to take note of. His arrogance and superiority complex can blind him to the most obvious things, leading him to overestimate himself, which can prove to be fatal on the field. Not only that, but he has not displayed any interest of getting closer to Naruto and Hinata. Also, I believe that the only reason he agreed to go with the ruse of the other two was to beep that he beeped, not because he would have worked together with them even if they asked him to do so. I know this because he didn't even thank them for basically allowing him to beep, said Kakashi with the utmost seriousness. That is indeed troubling, mused Hiruzen before fixing Kakashi with a serious gaze. In light of this new development, I want you to include Sasuke in your observations. Try to subtly encourage him to form bonds with Naruto and Hinata, as unlikely as that seems to be going by your words. In case that fails, try to make him form a significant bond with you. If you have to show slight amounts of favoritism in order to ensure Sasuke Uchiha doesn't become a flight risk, do so. If his relationship with Mikoto wasn't so abysmal we could have used her help, but alas we must work with what we have. Kakashi nodded his head. Understood. Good. Dismissed. XXXXXXXXXX. Streets of Konohagakure. Even though he showed an indifferent expression, Sasuke inwardly basked in the looks of awe and reverence most of the civilians sent his way the moment they caught a glimpse of him. As they should. I am an elite shinobi, thus, they most act accordingly towards their betters, he thought to himself as he neared his apartment that was provided to him by the village. After the MB Paker, it was impossible for him to live in the Uchiha compound. Thankfully, It had not been necessary for him to go there in order to retrieve some of the scrolls he had been using to train himself on Uchiha techniques for the past year. Sasuke, he heard a voice whisper not too far away from where he was, and he scowled when he recognized. He turned towards it only for his anger to increase at the sight of her. "Mother," he replied, his voice strained as he looked at her. Makoto Uchiha frowned both in sadness and in disappointment as she looked at her youngest son. Despite being in her late 30s, Makoto still maintained a youthful appearance thanks to her good genes. She was an extremely beautiful woman of fair skin with long, straight black hair with bangs hanging on either side of her face that framed her cheeks and black eyes. The clothes she was wearing, a simple dark purple blouse with a red plum skirt and a light yellow apron worn over it, did little to hide her curvaceous figure. Knowing what today was, Makoto gave a tired sigh. "Can I ask if your team beat the test by your behind Jonin-sensei?" After a moment, Sasuke answered. "Yes. Congratulations," she said, even though she knew it wouldn't be appreciated, which was confirmed when Sasuke just scoffed and looked away from her. Though he didn't leave, which she took as a good sign, so she attempted another question. "And may I know who are the other members of your team?" After a longer pause, Sasuke also answered. "Our Jonin-sensei is Kakashi Hitaki, and my teammates are Hinata Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki." Makoto nodded in understanding when she heard Kakashi was Sasuke's Jonin-sensei. It made sense. He would be able to train him correctly in the use of his Sharingan when he awakened it. However, when she heard the name of Sasuke's male teammate, she couldn't help the light gasp that escaped her. "Naruto Uzumaki." Sasuke gritted his teeth in anger. "Yeah, what's so beeping special about him, huh? He is just a no-name orphan that will amount to nothing. Just a pebble in my path," he growled, conveniently forgetting once again that he had never been able of winning against him or the fact that it was thanks to Naruto and Hinata that he had beeped the test today. Makoto scowled at him when she heard his words. "It would do you well to not speak of things you don't know of, Sasuke," she told him frostily. If there was one thing she would never tolerate, not even from her own son, was for someone to mock anything to do with the sacrifice Kushina and Minato in order to ensure the continued survival of the village. Sasuke just scoffed. "Whatever," he said before shoving his hands back into his pocket and walking away from his mother in direction of where his apartment was located, in one of the nicest parts of the village. He couldn't stand the sight of whom to him was a weak and spineless woman that neither lover or pride for her slaughtered clan. Makoto looked at him for a few moments before shaking her head as she started to make her way towards her own home. On the way, she couldn't help but curse the greediness of her dear husband, Fugaku, and most of her clansmen in planning a coup d'état that resulted in their termination. She also cursed Fugaku for raising Sasuke in the way he did. And finally, she cursed the moment she had simply accepted being given off to Fugaku and not fighting to be with the one she truly loved. Kushina. XXXXXXXXXX. Hyuga compound. As he walked away with an air of nonchalance around him, Hinata looked at Naruto's back with a longing expression on her face. The moment he turned on a corner and disappeared from her sight, she resisted the urge to activate her Byakugan until he was past the limits of her range of vision. Instead, she sighed longingly before making her way into the terrain within Konohagakure that belonged to her clan. She grew embarrassed when she saw the amused looks the guards at the main doors sent her way as they bowed to her in greeting as she beeped by them. Despite her embarrassment, Hinata couldn't help the warm feeling going through her entire body that she recognized as simply happiness. Not only had she managed to beep her that she would be in the same team as Naruto for a long time, but she had also spent most of the day with him. After he introduced her to Ichiraku Ramen, which she was sure she was going to frequent a lot from now on, they had gone to walk around the village, just talking and being happy for beeping and being on a team with one another. Before they noticed, evening arrived and they were both hungry, and at Naruto's insistence, they had gone for dinner at a place that sold dango and, much to her joy, cinnamon rolls. She suspected that Naruto had suggested the place on purpose, recalling that she had said she liked them, the implications of which sent her to a giddy fit after she realized Naruto paid her enough attention to do something so sweet for her. If that she was a Hyuga didn't clue you in, Hinata wasn't blind. She knew that Naruto was more than a bit physically attracted to her and that he liked her as a person as well. Successful relationships between two individuals had started with even less than that. Hinata knew that she could make her move, and it wouldn't take too long or too much effort to make Naruto fall in love with her. However, there was another factor to consider. Two of them, actually, Ino and Sakura. Her two best friends also liked Naruto, maybe not for exactly the same reasons as she did, nor to the same extent, but certainly to the point that Hinata doubted they would like someone else just as much. Also, Hinata made sure they knew that the reason why she was who she was today and her improvements, and thus Sakura's and Ino's improvements, were indirectly and directly caused by Naruto, which was perhaps the main reason they shared about liking him. And Hinata loved Ino and Sakura so much and was so thankful towards them for both their friendship and everything they have done to help her become who was today, that she truly willing to share Naruto with them, and they knew it and were also willing to share the same man with the other. There was the fact that they also found each other more than just a bit attractive, which made the dynamic of their friendship and future relationship interesting, to say the least. Truthfully, Hinata first wanted to ease Naruto into the knowledge that if he got with her, he would have to be with two other girls as well. She knew for a fact that that scenario was a dream come true for most men, and Naruto had already expressed that one of the things he liked was strong and beautiful kunoichi, which the three of them most certainly were. However, she knew that it could possibly be overwhelming to have such a thing happening for real. She needed to ease him into the idea before doing anything else. I hope things don't become truly complicated in the future, thought Hinata as she stepped into the main residence of the Hyuga compound, where she lived with her father, younger sister and the maids tasked with seeing to the house their needs. Welcome back, Hinata-sama, greeted a fair-skinned woman wearing a full-length black kimono with a white apron worn over it as she bowed deeply at the waist. She had short, dark green hair and large white eyes, indicating that she possessed the Byakugan as well. Heishi-sama requested your presence in his office the moment you came back, she told her with a small smile as she rose from her bow. Hinata smiled back at her. Thank you, Natsu-san. Can you prepare me a bath? I'd like to shower immediately after my talk with him. Oh, and I already ate, so there's no need to worry about it, she requested. Natsu nodded her head. Of course, Hinata-sama. It shall be done, she said with another bow. With another word of thanks to the maid that had been with them for as long as she could remember, Hinata made her way towards her father's office. It was not often when he requested to speak with her in such a manner, so it must be urgent or of some importance, which meant that she couldn't afford to make him wait more than was necessary. After a few twists and turns across the long hallways of her home, Hinata arrived to the door of the room her father used to conduct most of his affairs. She gave two polite knocks before announcing her presence. Father, is me. Natsu-san told me you requested my presence. Yes. Hinata, come in, said a voice from the inside. With a small smile, Hinata slid the door open, stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Her father's office, unlike how was the norm with men and women of noble birth, didn't display his wealth. It only had the things it needed in order to be a comfortable workplace where even important meetings could be held. If Hinata was honest, she liked the practicality of the room. She took a seat on the chair in front of her father's desk and smiled at him. Good evening, father. Heishi was a middle-aged man with long black hair and featureless white eyes. He had a few wrinkles here and there that indicated he was used to be frowning most often than not. That frown, however, was nowhere to be seen as he regarded his eldest daughter with a small smile. Hinata. I didn't think you would arrive so late today. Did the test of your Bepine Jonin-sensei extended up to this point? Hinata blushed a bit. No, father. The test ended at around noon, but I went with one of my teammates for a celebratory lunch when we beeped, and then he insisted on walking through the village. We lost track of time, and before we noticed evening arrived and he insisted on having dinner. He walked me back here immediately after, she told him, growing redder by the moment as she lost the ability to look at her father in the eye due to her embarrassment. Hiashi's lips twitched upwards in amusement, but he didn't let that show as he instead raised a shrewd eyebrow at her. Uzumaki-san, I presume. Hinata seemed to shrunk into herself. Yes. Heishi allowed himself to chuckle. Hinata, you know I don't have issues with you interacting with him as long as it doesn't negatively interfere with your development, and he keeps his hands to himself, he said with amusement, though inwardly, if I'm being truthful, I believe I worry more about Hinata keeping her hands to herself. She does take after her mother after all. Poor kid. Were the dry, but fond, thoughts that went through his head. You don't have to worry about neither, father. Hinata was quick to beep him. Naruto-kun was a perfect gentleman today, and it was thanks to the plan he devised that him and I managed to successfully capture Kakashi's sensei during the test. If anything, I believe Naruto-kun will only help me grow and become stronger, she declared confidently, which she was currently only capable of doing when around her family. Heishi raised both eyebrows. Successfully capture Kakashi Hitaki? Hinata, please explain, he requested. With a smile, Hinata proceeded to explain how her test went. An explanation later, Heishi watched as his daughter, who was living image of her mother and love of his life, almost skipped out of his office after he finished his talk with her. Truthfully, he was extremely thankful to not only her friends, Ino and Sakura, whom he knew were why she was so confident in herself, but also to Naruto Uzumaki, whom he knew was the one who inadvertently stoked the fire within Hinata to become the best version of herself, someone that even the elders were proud to call the heiress. It was the reason why he approved of him, after all, and why the relationship with his eldest daughter was so good. So, basically a combination of Kushina-san and Minato-sama, is he? I pity the poor souls that would dare to go against him, thought Heishi to himself, pleased at the very high possibility that someone like him would be directly connected to the clan in the future. It didn't matter that he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, that only added to his worth in his eyes. Besides, he knew that Naruto would eventually become able of controlling that power, what with his pedigree and talents pointing to that conclusion. Oh, if they only knew. If they only knew, to be continued, and thank you for watching. Please do subscribe to this channel.